Something about who is in government or something. It's little scenarios. No, it's stories about the job that we read together.
Go coffee first. I'll go tea right before I guess.
Is it decaf?
No.
Decaf coffee?
No, they probably.
I think I'll get. I'm sorry.
Yeah, did you want it? Yeah, no.
Stuff now, so figure it out.
My husband says that stuff about everybody's going to get many of those people are going out someplace for their second house. You know, your second home. It's not cheap. I mean, there's a lot of people.
So I need to go buy these. I discovered I like these.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
Chocolate sometimes when it's caramel. Really crazy. Will actually do the work.
We don't have any.
Not an apple cinnamon really as much, so.
me either. That's why I was surprised. It was the only flavor left.
Oh, you're like, so I'll try it.
I really like that.
I mean, really. Yeah.
Who knows? I'm not going over. You know what the funny thing is ever since I was little, I have
Yes. I was so upset. I was like, I'm never using it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I get to see things here. But I don't know. And it says, pages 4 and so someone told me.
Where on the table corner?
Like, I'm meeting so too.
Back at like 10. I'm assuming I can take one.
What do you need? Oh, yeah, absolutely. They were leftovers from another meeting.
And it's by the product.
You knew Johnson Brown? And you know all the other ones right there?
Mhm.
There's a picture. It's just like the very first picture. And then right before where they were kissing.
Which is nice because he is still there.
I'm like, that's what yeah.
Oh,
see?
That's
And they were like, it's gonna be a couple hours. I was like, okay. The fact that you guys are taking
you're getting to. Well,
I'm
yeah,
customer for life.
I got to take it to
You did.
I did. And then it's me.
But we thought that
I love it. Oh my God, I love it.
Yes.
It hasn't changed since. Good.
Yeah.
I have expectations about everything. That used to be our.
That's a different question, right?
It's a. Yeah.
And then it was
Something. Yeah.
Yep, don't even have to just, yeah.
Oh.
Because
I think I had seen this when I was. How far along do they get to this? I mean, you know, when it
A lot of times they just said no reportable.
I know. And then this employee just. Then they had something else. Oh, they told me kind of like. Yeah, I printed out the, but I never saw. Where was it that you? Oh, you just won the item. I was gonna say, so what is that? I texted you last night because I wanted to. Not that I had.
well, this, I don't know.
Did it?
Oh,
Oh.
But,
Wow.
I'm just excited.
Yeah, well, he said, yeah, well, he said he could because they gave him a 10-point plan. You and yeah, well, that was already that.
I do.
Which had to pay What did you say? There were ambulances at night over the
Oh
weekend?
my gosh, you're right. Oh,
You did? But then either he or his sister or his. He sleeps while golfing? Oh, in the cart?
even if you should know.
Say something. See, I believe that that's it. Like, I get that's what I'm saying.
No,
Right. Right. But there is.
Did you read that article that I sent? No, the one that was, well, yes. It was more funding.
so what does it
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. The new one. Yes, and I'm sure they. We should get. But if you want
But mine was
that they.
let's do
And I think the article was saying.
So I'm just gonna let you yes, both of them. One's a classified speaker.
Yeah, yeah, and see if it's enough.
And I'm like, I said,
Whoops.
I don't know what happened. I don't know how these. It's also, but yeah, it's also. So I'm using it.
You? Oh, I thought maybe you. Dangling some information.
I don't know. I don't know. I thought they buying insurance there. I think now that there's
We go back to the vacation.
So then you can buy, so it's just like the next. It's funny, it's still shutting on contrary.
I was curious. Yeah, yeah.
Me? No. He's in. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this one.
One of them is, yeah, see, the sun is still shining up there.
Ladies and
so-
gentlemen, I just got a text message. It looks like they should be done in the next 10, maybe 15 minutes. Thank you.
All right. I'll continue scrolling.
I'm gonna let the people outside know.
I didn't get, what I did get was when it started spinning. Oh, here we go. Huh? Just one this morning, now, I'm like every third day.
I never get these better like these.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
She's running that. Okay.
I heard every once in a while there's a boom. This one, it wasn't a boom, it was more like a rumble. It was weird, I've never heard of something like that. Yes, I know Lisa. Has a lot to complain. I love Lisa. Yes. I'm gonna Lisa. Oh, really?
Yes.
Lexi?
Yes, so she was holding it. Lisa was holding it. And our dog, our male dog was very. Male dog didn't have one over 6 times.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Not the fact that for the whole day. I saw her the next day, like, come stay here.
Well, something happened. Oh, no, I've known
Her
Lisa.
dog is very, very kind. She said, because she was holding me all the
She's
time.
bigger than you
Yeah, my dog was
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
But she was holding her on the counter and she said, she thought.
He's gonna take it. Does Lexi like avocados?
All dogs like avocados.
Oh, do they?
What did you do?
Yeah. And again.
Yeah.
Oh. Career Sally and who?
Right now, Sarah's, because we had a. Yeah, it's the precipitation wet, it's not snow. So, 3 days ago, we had a time just came in July. And so the posts that are usually for people, like, as far as our- 5 a.m., so it's frozen. Oh, wait, I guess to do it. Frozen, no thank you.
How much?
They're running out of names.
We both would be on it. I'm not even I actually.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Haven't seen that. Oh, you haven't seen them?
On eBay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Over the way. So
Then
the quarantine,
So
though,
then you.
isn't it there that they have to quarantine?
If you go through a certain regimen here, treatment shots and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Once you do that, you go to like.
Oh,
Good to know. Later.
Oh, you leaving?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll watch it on the live
I
stream.
know. Thanks for being there. Later.
Bye.
I know. 3 years.
Thanks. I appreciate your thoughtfulness.
Well, my girlfriend thinks.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh my goodness, look at his eyes. His ears are funny. Not funny, but, you know, expressive.
No, I got him in was arrested. Because
The air.
he, my girlfriend.
Right there? That's what I'm saying. Now it's better.
Time of the, it's up there.
Oh,
Yeah, I really wanted to. But
First
like,
day.
likely later.
Everything in 4 days.
Yeah.
And 2 years is a good time.
Today.
We've been at it for a while.
A lot of trauma.
He just got back.
He was stuck in
He just got back. So he's.
I felt that way.
How long did it take?
When it was so, it's not ready for this, and I even looked at the cafeteria.
Well,
It's just like, it's for them, you know.
He's a little smaller.
Oh, right. And then you're like, I gotta know.
Oh, okay, I was thinking.
They're still close to it, and then you're really good with that, so one of them.
I was gonna say that. We don't have any more. We
Oh
retired.
my gosh.
We just had to put.
Oh, that's really nice. That's nice. I love that. My kids live there, but my youngest so probably I'll get a teacher. Oh, honest.
Yeah.
That's the thing. This baby.
James did.
And so the children.
Yeah, so.
He's the baby too. And they're bunch.
So is it going okay now? James,
What?
loaded, is it?
Face wells.
Yeah.
It's like a little house.
So if.
Next month.
Tiny houses. And how does she adapt? Was it hard?
You know about. Kathy Howard, you know,
Yeah.
that's Kathy Howard. She's volunteer.
Now she's okay.
What's the Harvest? What was the one on the corner?
Harvard, yeah.
Harvest. Yes. She was like.
I do feel
really
like.
involved. And then. That whole event should be nice.
So,
But anyway,
Yeah, not at all. It wasn't.
yes, it is. Yeah.
Or maybe he just went.
Oh, no, it's everywhere. Oh, yes. Yeah. They weren't there enough.
I have two, yeah, the ones that the two girls, they were like,
Yes.
this is like,
But afterwards, I feel
yep.
break out. And not so much, I love it. Bring it
And that's what you know. It's like, why are you headbutting me all the time? Yeah, yeah. And then. And now it's just, you know, okay, enough for now. But, you know, just and he's like,
It's interesting to hear this from your side. Going to
oh my goodness, yeah. From, oh, nice, okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. My baby sister, she lives here off the office.
And I have to admit,
She's a nurse.
they open and there was probably, it could be a bad community. There are people that are, first of all, bad.
Like, I don't know, maybe she
Maybe, is it open? But it's open, it's like.
maybe she's like, Mom.
It's downtown, yeah, it's not gonna happen. Anyway, so, you know.
And then my other daughter was like, yeah, just,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, did you?
Yeah. Yes.
And something was, and we can actually. My sister, my daughter, that's seasick, found out.
Oh, it's your money.
Oh, good. I'm getting my, I had a knee replacement last year. And this is my second.
Because it was even.
Yes. Yeah, and then I just. Last year.
No, we like it over here. We came in into the beginning and it's over here. So what's happening?
So comfortable.
The microphone. Yeah, you may have to share it. We can hold on.
Oh, he's over. Really? Anyway, Kelly Powell was affiliated.
Oh, please, yes, please.
Anyway, she was affiliated with us. And so, that was.
I would love that. Drag serve. I know that. I don't even know what she was doing. She told me, I guess. I don't remember.
You guys are. She, you know, she can take off this thing.
Yeah, that's what she was, and I got you. I'm not doing that stupid car.
Yeah, I'll.
It's something. 7:45.
Oh, yeah.
There's room here. Here.
It's not our visual here.
Anyway.
How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you.
And she's still doing homeless people. Well, during COVID, she was driving down the street. Seeing all these people,
You for puzzle.
all this really good furniture.
Yeah, she said, I'm out of work.
With,
And then the downstairs are jacked up.
Oh, is it?
No.
yeah.
You can watch the stream.
No, he can't go home because he's our ride and we're staying.
Now she's doing.
Well, if you need her.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, he's my cousin.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, he's my cousin.
So I kind of
He's
made
not
a
there.
note,
So you have his key?
Oh,
So you never see that. No, he called the all the other little cousins, little cousins. So all the little ones would hide, and then they go inside.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, and then they said, and take off running, and we're screaming and scared, and they're just.
Flying
I was like, oh, yeah.
Well, you did put
You know what that means.
Hi, son. How are you?
You had a good break?
I had a great break, yes, thank you. I turned my phones off. I did.
moved to,
Oh.
yeah, they.
You're like, I know you're not saying something.
Yeah.
And then it made sense right? And so she's searching.
Listen to
Where's your phone?
And you better get
You know, they did the Pacific and
It's tragic. My best friend speaks Spanish.
It's a kid named Zero. This year. Oh, literally like last week or the week before, and it's just.
It's judging.
Yeah.
Right?
How are you guys?
She totally does that. It's really
Oh, you.
but they were such great art.
Because usually I'm like,
No.
Quite common to get artists.
There was a nice,
Really good.
positive, positive. I think I close the spirit door.
just in case, because you know me, I'll jump over it.
Oh, I've got.
I don't think there's any.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, I feel the air. When you work them down, you don't have any elections.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started with our regular session. First, we're gonna go ahead and report actions taken in close. So the closed session item, conference with real property negotiations pursuant to government code 5495 6.8, reporting out statements for employee release and not re-elect. Okay, in closed session, the board discussed 3 proposals for the June estate located on the easterly terminus of Ralston Street, northerly terminus of Beaver Street. The 8 proposals for Avenue Elementary School located at 2647 North Avenue, Ventura Avenue, Ventura, California, 93001. And the 7 proposals for the Washington Elementary School located at 96 McMillan Avenue, Ventura, California, 93001. The board selected the proposals from and will now enter into an exclusive negotiation agreement with Cabrillo Economic Development Corporation for the June estate because they showed strong capacity to entitle a feasibility project. Feasible project. So the motion was from President Forsythe, second by Vice President Fredericks. The roll call as follows: ayes 5, no 0, abstention 0s, and absent 0s. Ventura housing for the Avenue Elementary School because of the underlying terms of the offer, such as the price, closest escrow timing, and deposit where the district's best interest. The motion was from Trustee Rodriguez. The second was from President Forsythe. Roll call as follows: the ayes are 5, the noes or nays as 0 or none, abstention none, and absent none. City Ventures for the Washington Elementary School site because the underlying terms of the offer, such as the price, close of escrow timing, and deposit, were in the district's best interest. The motion was from Trustee Rodriguez. The second was from Dr. Vandenberg. Roll call as follows: 4 ayes, 1 no from Trustee Fredericks. Abstentions 0. Abstentions 0. Okay. Thank you, board.
All right. And as just stated, the board has selected the proposals of the Cabrillo Economic Development Corporation for the June estate, the Ventura Housing Authority for the Avenue School site, and City Ventures for the Washington School. The district will now enter into negotiations with each selected entity. Once the negotiations are completed and an agreement is finalized, the board will take action to approve the agreements at a regular board meeting in open session. In addition, a public hearing will be held prior to the board taking those actions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to move into our open session. We do not have public comment. Our open session item, I should say. Conference item 12A1, Local Control and Accountability Plan, otherwise known as the LCAP overview. Dr. Davis.
And before Dr. Bayless and his team pick us up where we left off, just a reminder of what got us here. We're not going to go back to the beginning portions of the presentation, but where we are in the current LCAP, we are in year 2 of a 3-year plan. We will finish up year 2 this year. Next year is the 3rd year of that 3rd-year plan. But meanwhile, part of this study session is for the board to come to a greater understanding of the structure, the philosophical framework of our current LCAP, because as soon as we start the next school year, even though we are in the 3rd year of that plan, it's actually the development, it's all the foundational pieces. For the end of next year, we have to propose our next 3-year plan to the county office. And so this is for us to get foundational understanding of how our current LCAP is structured, why it's structured that way, what the constraints are, what the choices are. I'll just briefly paraphrase that we spend a lot of time talking about that currently. There are kind of 3 schools of thought with an LCAP. The minimum is right at LCAP that only shows supplemental concentration dollars because that's all that's required to do. We didn't do that. We added additional funding, state, local, federal, that are centered around additional actions and services to show a greater complexity and contribution to what it takes to actually move the needle on those issues. So that's where we stand in the middle. And then another approach, which we haven't taken, but some districts have, is to say, this is a budget document. You want to know, you want transparency, here it is. this is how much we are spending on every single action that the district does. It far exceeds supplemental and concentration and designated dollars to support those actions. It says this is basically our budget, and this is what it takes to run a district. So that's where we spent a lot of time last time. And Greg, I don't think we need to, or you want this, you're doing this one?
Goal 1.8.
Yeah, so we left off on 1.8, we can use the other slide.
Oh, sorry.
Other slide.
Yeah, we already went through that.
Sorry.
Okay, so you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Castro, President Forsyth. Trustees, once again, a pleasure to be with the LCAP team. Pick up where we left off from our last meeting, where we finished at 1.7 and moving on to 1.8. So once again, just as a reminder to the public, the one is goal one, increasing student academic achievement, performance reducing gaps, and the 8 is the specific action. So this specific action is digital instructional tools that support access and increase academic achievement. So this is all of our software that falls into that category that is specifically focused on decreasing those achievement gaps between students and improving overall student performance. So happy to answer any questions that we have here or that you may have on these items. Or team, if there's anything specific you want to highlight here that might be new or important.
I'm happy to start. Since IXL is at the top of this bulleted list, and this was a new digital tool that we implemented this year, I pulled some of the usage data for your information. Right now, 76% of all of our teachers are using it regularly, which is 482 teachers. 17 schools have over an 80% usage rate. So that's elementary, middle, and high school combined. 2 of our schools have 100% teachers using it. I just want to shout out Homestead and Loma Vista. Loma Vista has gotten quite competitive actually with it. Next year we do, however, since we are analyzing the usage, we do plan on reducing it. Our TK through second graders aren't really using it. They have other new tools that they're using, so we can remove that from those grade levels, and 12th grade is not using it. So we will reduce that contract by close to $70,000 next year is what we estimate. But the time in IXL is exactly where we want it to be. There's a lot of things you can do with IXL, but 62% of users are working specifically in their identified skill level practice. So whatever that diagnostic showed their level to be, that's where students are sort of working, progressing through that. 19% are using the assessment tools in there. 7% in quizzes, 6% in games, but 90% of the time is at school, only 10% at home. And that's good news because we didn't want IXL to become homework, right? So we're really pleased to see that data. Happy to answer any other questions.
Did I actually wanted to also remind the board too, one of the primary reasons why we brought this last year was because it's very much core skills, CAST aligned, and we didn't have an intervention secondary curriculum in English and math, and that's always been a struggle for us. So this is serving in 2 capacities. One as sort of a tier 1 in the classroom kind of instructional approach, skill support, and also for our intervention courses in math and English. So I'm really pleased to see how, I'm looking forward to the results at the end of this year after we see our test results to see.
The question I would have regarding the other programs, that data on the one program is nice, but do we do the same thing for all these other programs to determine if they're being used and worthwhile, or are there any we're going to drop?
Yes, we do look at usage across the board. And so, for example, RAS Plus, which is level readers for 3 through 5th grade, are really not being used very much. There's other components from other programs that teachers seem to be using more than that. So we are going to be, digging in a little bit deeper, but right now we're planning on removing RAS Plus for next year just because of lack of usage. Securely, we also tightened looking at which grade levels are using it, which aren't, and then distributing licenses among the grade levels that are using it regularly, and then if a teacher reaches out at a sort of an outlier, I may be a first grade teacher, but I am using this to every little nook and cranny I can, great, we're happy to give you a license, but just trying to be a little bit more careful with that blanket provision of a license that's not being used.
And Karen, it's probably important to remind the board about California math expressions too.
California Math Expressions is our math curriculum that was discontinued, and that was a really high quote that was given to us at the beginning of the year. So we sort of pivoted, and that 59,820 is the bare bones, so that teachers could have access to what they needed to teach digitally in the classroom. But as far as like the student piece and all that, we got rid of that because it was available in IXL for this year. So that 59,000 is bare bones. That will be gone next year. Both of the math pilots that we are undergoing right now provide tailored individual practice for students in some component. So that will be gone and will be looped into whichever math program we end up going with.
So at this point, Dr. Van Board and trustees, we envision potential reduction in RAS Plus. We are planning for a reduction in those grade levels, licenses for IXL. We're also moving away from Mastery Connect. That's a product that we are in a multi-year agreement with. That we've given what IXL can do, we can move away from them as well. I thought I'd highlight security. That is it's our firewall. It's also our what used to be called Dino, where teachers can see all students' Chromebooks at one time for sort of digital accountability. It's also our one student-facing AI chat that students are allowed to use. So that's what security is. I don't think we've ever highlighted that.
I just would like to piggyback off security. I use that in my classroom, and it's incredibly helpful. It also gives you a breakdown of how many minutes students spent on different programs. You can see if they've been playing, like happy numbers might be great, but we're not spending 30 minutes doing happy numbers games when we should be doing our reading. So it gives a printout that you can talk to parents about. It's wonderful. I digress. So a couple of questions. IXL Learning. I like that they're not using it specifically for homework, but when you say 90% in the classroom, like how does that translate into minutes? Because equally, I don't want teachers using it, like, oh, we're gonna do our tier 1, here's your IXL. Like that doesn't take the place of good, one-on-one. So how many minutes is that being used?
I don't have those exact minutes. That would take a little bit more discussion amongst the teachers and the staff, which we will be doing this year to get that information. But my understanding is that there's some individual work time, absolutely. There's also groups. So when they're doing groups, IXL could be one of the groups that they're in. But we can certainly bring that back.
And it kind of digresses away from LCAP, so I don't expect you to have that data, but it would just be interesting to know how it's being used in the classroom. And then my other question is, the planned expenditures, say 1.6, and the total actual year is 1.1. So are we anticipating more to incur more costs this year? Is this just year to date or?
Yeah, this is year to date. And so we'll have additional costs throughout the year. A lot of our softwares, they go from 7/1 to 6/30, just along with our normal fiscal year. And so certain vendors, we have to have the payment in before 7/1 for them to start the license. So there's certain softwares that we'll continue to purchase in this fiscal year.
And just building on, just to answer your question, in elementary, IXL is being used to help with small group rotations mostly, or UA practice time is where we see it being used. And Joey, would that, universal access, when every student receives the help that they need, whether it be enrichment or, extra teaching, or thank you for the acronym. And Joey, would the Canvas that we got rid of show up on here as part of the budget?
Not this year,
Okay.
because we purchased a 5-year license.
Okay, because we did get rid of elementary Canvas right before the year started, because again, it wasn't being used.
So then the adjustments will be made in the upcoming LCAP that we presented in June. We'll have we'll sit with the LCAP team, or DJ Carey and Greg, go through each line item and adjust accordingly.
So I just want to follow up on what Joey just said. So we have 1.1 here, the planned expenditures were 1.6. The $500,000 difference is based on.
A large portion of that would have been California Math Expressions. That was nearly 3 times in the original quote, but because it was not being renewed and the quote was not part of a contract that was a standalone year, it was really expensive. And that feature we were able to provide for the students with IXL. So that came in at less than 30% of what it was planned for. So that probably had a big effect.
Yeah, and once again, I mean, as we're preparing for the planned expenditures, we're doing that in April. And so, you know, we're doing our best to estimate what the costs are gonna be, what softwares they'll need. And as we meet with them, there may be a software that they are planning on using and they may not end up needing it, or in this case where we got a better deal on it.
Yeah, that wasn't, I guess my, I should have been more clear with my question, because, you know, if we're $500,000 under budget, that's great, but you said, well, this is year to date, which made me think we expect to be at 1.6 by the end of the school year. But if it's not on this list now, then we're not buying it this school year because it would have been planned for from last April.
Yes, and like and for most of our vendors, if we can, we try and purchase it in the fiscal year that we're actually using the product. There's only rare times when a vendor says, you know, you have to have your license in place starting 7/1 or else you lose access to that software.
So essentially, you'd have to pay for it in this fiscal year or the upcoming fiscal year.
Right, but something can only appear on one fiscal year. So if we're paying for it in May of this year, it shows up as this year, next year's free.
It'll
Right,
be,
so
yeah.
that's the way that works.
So then next year, we'd have to, essentially, when we work with them, we'd have to take that cost off from the budget.
My question is, not so much the typing, well, that's not the issue, it's what, are we explicitly teaching typing? No, typing is a skill that's kind of running.
Yes, it's lessons and practice, and it actually gets a lot of use.
Okay, that's good, yeah, thank you.
Okay, on to action 1.9. 1.9 is that the action stated is teacher collaboration supports for common UDL, Universal Design for Learning, based lesson planning. So what we estimated is in the $217,000 range, and the collaboration subs for that planning, Joey, that's a year-to-date, an estimate right now, and some site initiatives that fall within that category of UDL lesson planning and common prep time, like some of our PLC, our professional learning communities work designed to get teachers to collaborate, come up with common formative assessments or common lesson planning or common reteaching approaches. So any other thoughts or comments on that?
I would just offer that, you know, like our math acceleration, teachers come together and they collaborate, and that's just one example of these, and they do that very frequently. So that's one of our middle school groups, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, as one example.
And this is where the elementary collaboration days come in. Every elementary teacher gets 2 days a year where they come together with grade level teammates from all the different schools and the TOSAs and go over different initiatives, training. Math framework this year was a big thing, whatever happens to be going on and being targeted for increasing capacity and learning.
My question here would go with the site initiatives, again, as in last time, you know, I want to make sure that all sites are being encouraged to take part, but I also want to make sure that one site isn't getting more than another. And so I think that you need to make sure that everybody knows about it and able to apply for that money.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think we've done a better job of that. I think maybe C+ at best a few years back when we started, and I think we've gotten much better at that. I do want to state again that there isn't sort of an equality or a proportionality with the distribution of those site initiatives because it's based on those red and orange performance levels on the dashboard. So admittedly, those schools that have student groups that are performing at those lower levels in those certain areas, we prod and nudge them more, and they might receive a higher proportionality. But there's certainly no school that is not encouraged to address some of their needs. And I would say that I'm going to venture to say, if I'm thinking of the list, every school has an initiative.
That is true for secondary.
In elementary, there's 2 or 3 that don't. They're non-Title I, high performing, that the principals did not have any red or orange anywhere and did not express like a particular need that fit within one of the goals, but the vast majority do. I think 15 out of 17.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
I brought this up last time, but the site initiatives, I mean, I would love to see the total, not just broken down, 1.9, because there are so many places in the LCAP where it's site initiatives. And I mean, I literally look at this and I'm looking at that going, $20,000 is a job. That's somebody's, that's a playground supervisor. That's, it's literally someone's job, $20,000. So if I want a deeper dive into specifically the site initiatives, because I feel like just budgeting that money, it makes it like monopoly money. And
yeah, we will absolutely do that. We'll put together like a letter that puts all of that together. One of so that's the ask. The reasoning then, if the intention is to potentially redirect targeted resources that are designed to alleviate orange and red high areas of need, and there isn't a match. Like, yes, it's true, 20,000 generally could be a section, right? At the secondary level, it could be one section that you're using for intervention. And someone wanted to use it for art, right? Like, and there was no clear nexus of connection between, we wanted to reduce the number of kids in the art class, right? But that doesn't clearly address that need for that orange and red. We still have to loop back to how is the person that we're wanting to retain or bring on directly tied to those outcomes, because that's part of what we have to do in the annual updates is speak to those things. And so that's the responsibility that this team has in both the creation of the LCAP and in the annual update portion. It doesn't necessarily mean we can't, right? It just means that there's a threshold of expectation in terms of having that LCAP correct. So that's the balance that we have to balance.
And I do want to just remind us, we talked about this in our previous session, Joey, that the LCAP is predominantly people. I forget the percentages. Are we 80% range?
Yeah. Generally budgets, they're 80-85%.
And so you're right, for this particular one, that's not a person. This is extra duty hours. These are, this is not a person, but many of our site initiatives are people and portions of people, portions of a team.
When you have these site initiatives to address areas of orange and red, I'm assuming that there's a feedback loop to see like, okay, we're assessing before we approve you for next year for something else. Can you just speak a little bit to like what does that look like?
When the principal comes out with a proposal, we take a look at it and there's a section for you to fill out. What are your goals? What are your metrics? What is this, targeting, how, et cetera? How will you measure? And then we can go back and be checking that and kind of, like you said, loop, that feedback loop to say, is this working? Do you want to extend this? Did you need all of it? All those kind of conversations happen as well.
So so UDL is a big one of it. I mean, as a special ed teacher, you pretty much do it anyways. But can you just, for 2 things, can you describe what UDL is, Universal Design Learning, and are we bringing in consultants for that? How did that articulate? Are we using our TOSAs to develop that in our schools?
We've brought in several consultants in the past, 10 years ago or something when we were building capacity. Now it's TOSA led. So UDL is Universal Design for Learning. Oh my gosh, I'm on the spot here. It's expression. There's 3 different components that it falls into that a teacher can approach: lesson planning, representation, or you can consider a wide variety of ways in which you present information, represent information, have students interact with information, that it then becomes more accessible to a wider variety of learners and types of learners, right? So that's sort of the lens through which our TOSAs are looking at all of the different pieces we're doing, whether it be literacy, math framework, whatever it is that happens to be going on. It's all sort of through that access to education lens of universal design for learning.
I think one of the primary ways it's expressed in these collaborations in elementary are trainings for teachers to implement station rotation and groups, so that those the wide range of student performance within a classroom can be addressed. And that's one of our fundamental challenges in education right now, is the broad range of student performance in any given classroom, as you both well know. So that's what UDL is designed to help teachers lesson plan for those realities.
So that brings up a question then. So when you're budget coding this sort of stuff, does a portion of this money then cover the TOSA positions?
No, not in this, because the TOSA have their own separate goal and action. So all the TOSAs are exclusively funded out of that goal and action.
Okay.
Yeah, this one's specifically for teacher collaboration. So again, I do want to emphasize that our TOSA teams are leading that work increasingly. So even in past areas where we brought in experts, like with CLRP, our TOSA teams are taking over those things. Certainly with supplemental novels, ethnic studies, the list is pretty broad. So we're really pleased about that. Okay, ready to move on? Congratulations, we've entered a new goal. We are Action 2. So Action 2 is about positive school climate for staff and for students, all positive school climate for the purpose of improving students' academic performance. So first and foremost, access to counseling here. You can see this is a big one. This is $5.25 million, 40 plus FTE, and broken down there by funding source. So predominantly LREBG, and I'll let Hassan and Joey speak to the technicalities of that. Supplemental concentration, that's the heart and soul of the LCAP, that covers 12.8 FTE. And then included in here are Title I. Now, I want to make a quick note about Prop 28. We have 2 sites right now who had sort of piloted this concept that we're implementing, that sites chose to implement more full next year with counseling with Prop 28. So that's a total of 0.4 in Prop 28 this year, and next year it's between 0.2 and 0.4 from various, almost every, not every, elementary school site next year. That's not represented here, but I did want to draw that through line here. Joey-san, anything you wanted to speak about with respect to LREBG and where we're headed with that?
Just that the board is aware, we presented that second interim, that LREBG funds would be exhausted. We'll have, essentially, if the governor's proposal goes through, we'll find out more in May. We'll get one final payment of LREBG, and then we'll get hopefully another student professional block grant. I think with those two combined, it's somewhere close to $8 million. So we'll get another pot of 110 funds to the board to decide if we want to extend these positions, and yeah.
Right, but just a quick reminder to the board. Yes, it's at the board's discretion. These are completely discretionary. However, we still, as we talked about last time, alluding to our certificated staff, we need to make sure that we're matching the one-time funds with the 10 positions. That's still a requirement that we need to be arranged.
And so an adopted budget would be, if everything goes through with the governor's proposal and maybe we can budget for those additional one-time funds, and hopefully the amount will increase.
This second slide for the same action here shows the total FTE, once again, but now itemized by school. And regrettably, we don't have the multi-funded source in the other column, but that's something I think we could probably speak to or piece together if you wanted to know right now. But as you can see, in and around one counselor per elementary school with some exceptions, and then Anna Kappa through De Anza all have 2.0. Not all of them are supplemental concentration because the allocation is done by school size. And those schools that had less than 2.0 elected to buy up through their school site council process with Title I funds. And the same, yes, and so you can see the differences there according to largely school size in high school. So any questions on this table here?
So I have a question about specifically like the high schools. So are those basically like the A through Z counselors? This does not include college career, this does not include wellness, this does not include healthy campus?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, these are ASCA counselors who are traditional academic guidance counselors, independent of SAP, independent of Data G, independent of wellness. Yes.
I would just like to request at some point to get the breakdown of how these FTEs are funded.
And this is preface to that. Joey, can you talk about just, because it'll be hard to tease that out of the document, but the importance of making sure that on the federal side, that we are on the supplement versus supplements, that we have to ensure that we're using, defining what our base is from a Title I perspective. Can you just speak to the importance of that?
Yep. One of the requirements under federal funding is the supplemental versus supplant, and supplanting is where you have your base funding and then you're essentially, reallocating funds out of your base and just using federal funds. So as part of that, we have to establish what our base funding is for our counselors. And so that is where we have our enrollment-based counselor allocations. And that's one of the reasons why you see the 12 FTE in supplemental concentration and the rest of it, the majority of it in LREBG, is the way that we set up the funding. It's anything that's coming from that enrollment base that is our coming from our LCAP. And then anything that's in addition to that is coming from our LREBG. And so that's how we're establishing what our base funding is so that we don't have any supplanting issues.
So I know that probably just made things even less understandable. The reason that I wanted Joey to touch on it is that way when you see the breakdown, that way you at least know that wherever you see Title I, think of Title I as like since we are writing a district-wide LCAP, it's not completely the same because it's federal, supplemental concentration of state, but it's that base that allows us the flexibility to do everything else that we do above that. So just think about that Title I is making sure that it gives us the flexibility to add and do anything above whatever that base is.
I think, what's helpful, and I'll just use Peter Ponte as an example, right? Because they're not a Title I school, so their base is their base, right? So we know that 100% of the Pierpont Elementary counseling is either base or site funds, right? And then being able to see which sites are allocating additional site funds, which ones are getting Title I funding for their counseling, right? Because if you just see a bunch of ones, that doesn't really tell you the picture, right? So that's my reason for asking. And I think most of us, having gone through all this, we understand the base funding model, so.
Yeah, we can get that for you. Yeah, we can get that. Okay, on to action 2.2, students, assistant counselors, and coordinated supports in this in the previous trustee's question about where those other counselors live. We have some here. So $2.5 million, 11.2 FTE, 2.3 of them are supplemental concentration funded, 0.8 are LREBG, and then we have this year the SAP and Wellness Counselor grants amounting to 8.1 FTE. We can address the prospects for next year's grants. Joey, I know that we had a discussion about that earlier today as well, but you can see the other costs down at the bottom. School resource officers fall into this particular action. We have a small wellness center supply fund, and all of our SARB and SARF funds for those meetings that happen throughout the year. So, Joe, any comments on that middle portion?
Yeah, so regarding the 8.1 FTE for the SAP and Wellness Center grants, so at this point, we've received verbal confirmation from DCOE regarding the SAP grant. They're still sort of trying to work on language to see if it's going to be within the same line of how the grant was structured before. The Wellness Center grants, we're going to continue to apply for those throughout the year. We've done a great job of receiving additional grants throughout this year. So we started the year with only one Wellness Center grant, and we're up to 4. And so we went to a point where I believe we only have one counselor funded out of Wellness Center grants, and we have, I think there's 1.2. So I think we have 6 of them now. We're going to continue to try and apply for grants, but as of now, we don't have any Wellness Center funding beginning with next year.
So in that case, when you have, so we've budgeted, 2.6 million for this, but now we've had 4 additional grants that have come through, right? So where does that additional, so does that just save us money from expenditure 2.2, or does that allow us to then project out further for those same goals?
So the goal expenditures don't change because, we're looking at the LCAP and the holistic approach of everything funding it, but we're moving expenditures out of the LCAP into these grant funds. So from a general fund perspective, it is helping the general fund.
And that's something that I have to address at the end of the year for the annual update for the county for it to pass. Anytime we're under expended in any given action, I have to write words song that explain how we're and why we didn't get to that point. So I'd have to describe the grant funds in this case, and so long as the explanation is sufficient and sort of passes the smell test, the county signs off.
Now, Joey, you said we don't have grant funding next year for these state positions?
No. Yeah, so everything would be funded in the LCAP at the beginning of the year.
We have verbal confirmation, but it's not final yet. So we may get additional grant funds, but we just can't say for certain at this time.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, in anticipation of the last conversation, this one, I again reached out to our BCB contact to get a sense. They're incredibly optimistic. They don't see that there's anything on the horizon that's going to get in the way of it. It's really just about going through the process. And like us waiting for the governor's proposal to materialize, we're in a very similar situation. This is expected to go through. They don't see any big barriers, but the timing is just as poor as the state budget is in terms of time.
But there's 2 different things going on. So sorry, let me just clarify. The SAP grant is what I was referring to is with the county, and we have verbal confirmation. We don't know if it's final yet. I mean, all intents and purposes, hopefully we get it.
SAP and PE.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then but the Wellness Center grants end.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, as of 6:30.
So what's the breakdown then between wellness and SAP?
I have to look. I'm pretty sure we have 1.2 counselors funded out of SAP. Yeah.
Plus the 7 FTE, that would be.
So we move back to the general fund.
Yeah, unless we continue to apply for.
Well, pause for that's why what's also coinciding with this is what we will get for the equivalents. We're using LRDG as kind of a placeholder because we will get one more payment for our old LRDG. The new block grants will not be called LRDG, but we're just using them as shorthand. So you know that we will get a one-time funding allocation. That's when we come to the board and say, here's the allocation. Just like we've done before, a portion of this, as I've said before, it's one-time funds. We need to tie one-time position to that one-time funds. But here's what the residual is. Very similar to the conversations we had around the extra office. Does the board want to maintain more people for 1 year, or do we want to maintain fewer people for multiple years? And that's the conversation that comes to the board.
But on top of that, we'll still continue to apply for the Wellness Center.
Right, but I guess, so what's confusing though is if this year we budgeted 2.6 and we got 4 Wellness Center grants, that then just essentially offset our planned expenditures and push money into the general fund, right? And it's not really helping us keep wellness centers longer because we reabsorb those dollars that we had already projected to spend into the general fund.
Joey, I don't know if you guys want to take a shot at this. The way that I think of it is that it does help us because we are deficit spending to such a degree. Anything that allows us to elongate the benefit of that is something that we're actively doing. That's where the board is saying we're okay maintaining X amount of deficit spending that is eating into our reserve because we know that the benefit of that is to maintain with our general funds, right? We're still paying for more than we had revenue for. So there is a benefit. There is a benefit, and it gives the board that flexibility to pay for people longer than we can afford. Really, I mean, that's really the benefit. Is that helpful?
No,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing. It frees up the general fund, and then the impact of the general fund deficit, we can maintain that specific deficit at that rate longer than accruing a larger deficit.
But in the out years, we're still essentially reflecting those positions to come back in the general fund unless there's additional one-time funding identified. So right now, we hope that we get the additional one-time funding to help, continue to fund these positions.
Yeah.
But yeah, it helps the 1 year issue, but yes, we still have to address that ongoing deficit.
And then just on the SAP, and you called it something else.
The PDA.
Yeah, thank you. So that is going to the Board of Supervisors and then to the VHAB, but has not yet done either of those two steps, correct?
Correct. The projected timeline that our VC contact said is most of the May or June.
That doesn't help
It doesn't have.
that doesn't help our budget that's coming at the same time. I mean, hopefully, it falls in that same timeline.
Okay, 2.3, sorry. 2.2, I forgot the same slide here. So this gives similar to the previous action, the distribution of those wellness counselors. You can see the social worker, SAP counselor, SAP liaison, how they are funded by this particular action. Oh, and thank you very much, Karen. We just had an error here. Data does have an allocation here. It just was not included in the tables. That's my concern. Good catch. Thank you. Apologize for that. Okay, action 2.3, foster a homeless liaison. $200,000 split over 1.0 FTE, multi-funded by Title I and supplemental concentration LCAP funds. And so we do have a homeless grant, and that is projected to continue. That's good news there through the coming year. And the student transportation is something that we should probably address. That's a big number. This is for our McKinney-Vento students where transportation to school is a barrier. And so we have various means of providing that transportation outside of our school buses, et cetera, that it comes at a cost. I don't know if either one of you, Dave, you've had a lot of experience with this, with giving some students at Pacific.
Site teams will work with McKinney-Vento families to identify solutions for transportation. Looking at school busing, obviously, if that's an option, if parents can't drive for whatever reason, school buses. Getting to that. With our older students, city bus is usually it can be an option for a lot of our families, but not always a preferred option. There tend to be safety concerns, especially for our younger students. So city busing is very popular with high school students as an example, but less popular probably with middle school. And not popular with elementary at all. But we do supply gas cards. So, gas is expensive and needs to be reserved for families' essentials. So we can sometimes offer gas cards for families for that. Hop Skip Drive is like an Uber.
Yeah,
for-
sorry, just before you go
Yeah.
on, like, there's also an analysis that comes along, that you don't just stick with gas card. You make a calculation of what the distance is, how much that would be, right, so I just wanted to add that.
And, they're not frequent. But the Hop Skip Drive, which you may have heard of, is like a school-based Uber service. We're changing vendors for next year, is my understanding, but that is essentially a private driver. Goes to the home, picks up the student and takes them to school, and same thing with the reverse of that. And that is the most expensive option.
How much do we spend on that, on Skip Drive?
Joey, I think we had a.
Yeah, so there's a variety of different, so there's the McKinney-Vento students, we have some SPED students, and then some gen ed students that need extra assistance. So in total, we spend about $250,000 a year. And the McKinney-Vento is about $150,000.
I just want to add something, that the piece that happens here is if you have a student enrolled at your school and their housing situation changes, we are required by law to remove barriers for them to continue to attend at the school of origin, right? So like last year, for example, Montalvo had a family, their housing situation changed, they moved way out on the avenue, but they felt very strongly it was in the best interest of the students to continue at the same school. And we eventually landed on Hop Skip and Drive to get them over to Montalvo to finish out the school year. And then they ended up transferring to EP when there was a natural break at the summer.
But next year, Hop Skip Drive is not an option.
It's something else now.
Yeah, there's a new company. And I'll say that, for everybody that applies, the foster homeless liaison, she reviews everybody's case individually, and we really look for other options, before they go with the Hop Skip Drive Uber route.
With that amount of money being spent, have we ever looked at having our own in-house? I mean, we have bus drivers that transport kids all the time. Why we can use smaller vehicles to
We've used vans, actually. We've gone through transportation and then utilized our school vans. That was pretty popular at the Pacific campus where we had both MSO students and Pacific High School students. So that has been utilized before. I don't know how often for any other sites, so I'm just speaking from my own experience.
But has anybody done analysis on it to see if we should just bring, we look at things to see if we should bring stuff in-house, and we're spending $150 here and maybe another $75,000 somewhere else. It seems like we can cut that down if we had our own transportation in-house. If you do this for a couple of years, we could have bought a van or bought 2 vans to do the same service.
And how many kids are we talking about?
We're talking about, Joey, high teens, 20s.
I think probably, mid-teens or so.
Okay, and I think one of the challenges, we can do that analysis. My initial thought is that given those 20 students, that's not something that one person could serve. There's a lot of logistics in moving around, and they're all at different schools, different bell schedules, early release, late release, high school bell schedule, elementary bell schedule. So that's my initial take, but we can continue to do that analysis nonetheless.
So we'll talk to Ari.
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
How many homeless foster kids do we have?
We better look on CalPads.
Yeah, let's give Joey that for that. It changes constantly.
Less than 1%.
As was about January's invoice, and there are 16 homeless students that use the Hop Skip Drive.
I'm talking about the total number of homeless foster kids that we have.
Well, homeless and foster, are like 2 separate groups.
And homeless also typically includes double up, which is people living, with a sister or whatever. And so the numbers can get a lot higher than what people might tend to think of when they think of that term.
And then when we provide that kind of transportation, I mean, is it continually assessed? Because I'm just wondering, like, if a student is now, because they're far away, not consistently attending school, right? But we're spending resources in the hopes that they'll attend school. Like, is there a point at which we say, you know what, we need you to be here more often, or we can't keep sending cops to.
I can't speak systemically, but that case that I mentioned that happened to Fontana last year, that's exactly what happened, because it was just kind of a logistic soup to get everybody where they needed to be. And so we continued to meet with the family and bring in student support services, and the family recognized that E.T. Foster, which was much closer, was probably a better choice, and they are enrolled there now and going this year. So, yeah, that's exactly what happened.
And we've canceled that service for, when it's not being used appropriately or consistently.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about the gas card, right? Because of course, like, we all want to help kids get to school, right? But like, if you give a gas card and then they're not attending, right? Like, is there a feedback loop to say like, well, we can't keep giving gas cards if you're not going to be driving your kid to school, right?
That does happen.
Yeah. 385.
We can go on to the next one and we'll come back.
Okay, so we got it.
Yeah, okay.
And so
That's both
385.
combined.
Yeah.
385.
Yeah, that still counts as we yeah. Okay.
So, we usually take a break about 8:30, so about 10 minutes over. So, okay, we'll do a little bathroom break, come back at 8:49.
Sure.
So we're gonna break and, come back at 8:49. Thank you.
You said 385.
385.
Foster and.
Yes.
You got 17.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yes. Foster's less than 620.
Yeah. That's, so 385, just one.
Just one, yeah.
17 is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, we've been trying and we haven't. A couple of frontline things about our setup that I want to talk through. See if possibly there's some changes that we want to consider for next year.
Yeah.
I know, but I don't want to, you know. From which standpoint? Not I'm not 10. No, that thing is a couple of things like that. No, but that's, you know, different community, different things, you know, you gotta be flexible, but one thing that I see right now is that personal necessity bucket is not tied to sick leave. And so it's shown like I'm making sure. Which the system will then allow them to schedule it. Even though they don't, you know, so like.
No. Yeah, I've actually talked to that. I always thought that because like one of them just.
You have to create it as a bucket. So PCOE has to set that up. So that when they use personal necessity, it also at the same time, there's something down.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, the other one.
Like,
Oh, no, I mean, yes, but that was where we go for all that, because, yeah, you actually right there, that good work, we all, we're right back for, we figured it out.
You know, all of these things, they take time, you know. That was built into the work year calendar, which made the like at certain job classes, there were some mandatory school was not essential. So we had to so here it's kind of nice because it's not part of their calendar.
Also, just thinking about that, typically approved.
Yeah. Well, because all of these things like live and die by what's in the front line and out center.
Because the problem is
Okay, thank you for.
Yeah.
Probably someone new,
It really doesn't much I have to tell you my experience is like, you know, it made it easier for people, but for everybody else, it was like a lot.
that's always the problem.
But the other challenge here is that we have so many.
I'm good. Good. How you doing?
And then what you do is,
You know, front line.
Yeah. Do you do anything? Nice. State education. Nice. That's nice. Yeah. A little bit. I worked yesterday. It was actually nice. It was nice, right? Because like it was like a halfway season. Nobody else was here, right? Yeah. Yeah.
What's on the school?
Will he do that? Like, has he like been trying to the salad bar at all?
Just
If you let him, yeah. Right, depends on what it is. If it's like, you know, to start with, then that's not good, but if it was. Yeah. It's there's some stuff that I'm like, yeah, not for me, but it's more about that, like, I just don't care for it than like, or really isn't, right? And the Costco bars are around, really good. They like they're on the fruit, right? And the cucumbers. The cucumbers, I'm like, all right. Well, that's, I mean, hey, like the doctor said, at least if you start with this quality thing, right? It could be worse. Good. It's not them, it's a law, right? And then we have to be super careful with the concept of the charity. Like, it's all well meant. People are like, I don't want to waste this, but you could have someone with a huge lactose intolerance or worse, right? And then the share table's not monitored as much as like the cafeteria. So, yeah, and there's always that kid that's like the fourth chocolate milk. You're like, stop. Were you? Yeah. You're making it nostalgic. This is the first year I'm going to say. So I started in 1996 teaching first grade. I taught for 20 years. And then I was in TOSA for 2 years, principal for 6, and now I'm here. But this is the only time. I mean, TOSA for 2 years, you're kind of not always asleep. Yeah. I'm like, oh, the chocolate now. That's good though. If I didn't miss it, I would be in the wrong space with my. That's right, right? Okay.
So you have any more
Nice. They're fun places. Almost all of the time, right? Almost all the time. I always like to call like a bunch of like positive calls so that people like, because then, you know, if you've gotten one in the bank account, if you have to call, it feels a little better, right? Anyway, well, nice to see you.
You know what was initially, I was just thinking about my but then it just like. And then yeah, I get my brain on, I'll walk out of your restaurant and sit there alone. Yeah, it was awkward initially. And it was fun. I also felt like afterwards.
That's why I gave him this to see. Gotta have like rounds.
Have you been
Round
doing like a?
You get one, everyone. It's your. You guys are way more expertise than the logistics of this. Where's the system?
Go ahead and come on back.
Yes, here we go, action 2.4, school community, student engagement, mental health supports and intervention. So plan on $1 million worth of expenditures here. As you can see here, we're under spend this category. We can have a little bit of a conversation about why, but nonetheless, this gives us a chance to talk a little bit about middle school athletics. Just having been to now many of them throughout the year, just the response from the team is overwhelmingly positive, and it's probably been our #1 parent engagement tool for middle school, much like it is in high school, of course, with athletics. But the reports are that, as you know, in middle school, we struggle with levers. We don't have credits, we don't have graduation, we don't have grades and graduation requirements, et cetera. There's not a lot of levers. And what sports has done is that it's given us a lot of levers, positive levers to help them improve their behavior, improve their academic performance in order to make that 2.0 eligibility that we self-impose in the same way that CIF imposes it on high school. So, yeah, John, I don't know if you wanted to speak to anything else, but I thought that was a particular highlight. Every time I go, the courts and the fields are lined with parents and staff cheering on students, which is great.
Happy to answer any questions. I would just say ditto to everything he just said about our middle school athletics enhancements through LCAP. But I would say in partnership with ELOP, not all of our schools at middle school have ELOP dollars. And so LCAP comes in to support. So flag football was initiated by ELOP, but it has a lead because we are able to supplement our other schools with LCAP so that all the schools can have a team. If ELOP can offer the sport, then ELOP, we're not double dipping in both pots. So we're very collaborative in our middle school athletics planning. And so just wanted to point out that we are a partner with ELOP, and the expansion is a result of ELOP and LCAP, which is.
So why are we $1 million under budget?
I can answer. So I can't speak to the whole million, but we estimated 81,000 for middle school athletics as sort of, if everybody spent everything. Our K-8s don't quite have the momentum yet to engage in all of the leagues, so that's one of the reasons we did allocate about 15 to 20,000 for those, and if that's not being accessed. But they don't always have every, coach, so.
Yeah,
I can't speak to the
and
others.
that's minor, but I think that's important that we're sort of under projected budget for middle school athletics. I think we're getting a lot of bang for our buck there. But I would say the primary reason is that coming out of, we remember we wrote this LCAP, we created this action 3 years ago when we had far more site proposals related to sort of mental health supports. We're getting way fewer of those. We established, Joey, just remind me if my memory serves, we established that as a pretty high number because we were getting a lot of site proposals for those kinds of things. And I think it's a good sign that we're not getting those. Many of our site LCAP proposals coming from sites are now about core academic interventions because we've improved in these areas. That's my just fundamental belief. Good.
Yeah, I just pulled up last year's LCAP request. Yeah, it was about 400,000 in site requests for the 2.4 action, and so we expected a lot more mental health, site requests.
So then why aren't we putting our wellness counselors into this?
I can add a
I mean,
little bit
that's
too. I can add a little bit too. When you get into detail, you don't have, when you get into the detail on the LCAP, the other thing that this goal was designed to do is to provide a lot of professional development. One of the things that we've had the benefit of is professional development one-time funds. We don't have those going forward. So that will be another layer of analysis, which is how we can continue to provide a level of professional development that we've done without those funds, especially once we know what our one-time numbers are. So that's another piece.
But $1 million is like an entire buyback day for the entire district. Like this is $1 million. Like that's more than $40,000 difference in school athletics. That's more than, one PD day. Like that blows my mind.
When we're looking at, so when we get the budget updates, you're projecting, right? Like, you're projecting that we're still gonna spend that $1 million.
No, so when we do our budgets, like first interim, second interim, I don't assume that we're gonna spend the full $1 million. We sort of do an adopted budget where that's where we're gonna layer in, our projections. And then first interim, that's where we're gonna look back and revise them. And in, action 2.4, I would have to look at it, but I probably have a couple $100,000 in the budget. I don't automatically just budget the entire planned expenditure.
So it's revised every time we bring back the interim based on our actuals and where we're trending to spend to.
So when we look at follow-up information, I would like to know what it's actually currently budgeted at for the rest of the year.
And like, where did the budget come from? Like, where did the $1 million come from? Did we spend that 2.5 years ago? And that's why school came with $1 million? Like, how do we even start with this is my question. Is like,
well, so last year, we had about $350,000 in site requests in the mental health space. And then once again, the goal is sort of the overarching, priority within the LCAP, and the actions are the individual items. And so there is flexibility there. So the wellness counselors could have very well been in 2.4. I remember talking with Greg, and we were literally reading like the description within the LCAP actions to see which one it best fit into. And there is wellness supports in 2.2, and we were sort of going back and forth. So there is a chance that it could have been in 2.4.
So are we over $900,000 somewhere else on the mental health part then?
No.
Like, my question is, we budgeted for $1 million. Why did we budget for $1 million? Where did that come from?
Well,
because you, in my experience, you do a budget based on something, right? You say, I'm gonna spend $1 million this year because I spent $850,000 last year, and we know stuff went up by a certain percentage. Then you make a budget for that. Like, where did the $1 million budget come from? What did we base that on when we said that in 2.4, we're gonna budget for $1 million? What was that based on? Who came up with that number, or where did that number come from?
I mean, it was all of us. It was a group discussion of looking at, what was the prior year expenditures, what were the people.
So what
was
was
the projection? And
Was a prior year anywhere near $1 million?
Yeah, so the prior year, the initiatives were about 350,000.
That's not
And then,
It's not near $1 million, but we're also projecting this program to grow, so we added some capacity to increase the budget to account for additional expenditures that occurred. And so
even if you double from the year before.
Yeah, but it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. We take a look at how much one individual costs, so it doesn't come out to like exact figures. So how we do it is, okay, we talk to the team and say, okay, what school and what program, how many people do we need, multiply it by whatever the dollar amount is, add in the benefits to come up with a projection. And yeah, sometimes we don't fully spend the money.
Yes, Dr. Reyes, in this category, are the interventions specifically related to mental health or any academic interventions as well?
Now, these would specifically be mental health, not academics.
I still have needs for interventions.
What I can say is that it's part of the process of the LCAP, when we write to areas where we underspend in our annual update, we also address areas where we overspend. What the county encourages us to do is that if looking at the LCAP as a whole, in the same way that you look at an IEP, that an IEP is a document from the start to the finish of the document, the county encourages us to, if there are things that we did that were not in another action, and we did them, and they fall within the intention of the LCAP, to capture that and write to it. So one of the things that we haven't spent time talking about is that we far exceed expenditures that are eligible for supplemental and concentration funding. We far exceed what we get for that. Then it gets down to, do we want to capture some of that? Because if we didn't have a grant that came through, but we were doing that service, do we want to capture that and say, that falls under this action or another action? So that's something, like when we talk about the discrepancy, let's say we end up with a $500,000 discrepancy in this item. Once we speak to all of the supplemental and concentration, that still doesn't answer the mechanism. The budgeting piece is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where did the $1 million come from? Because even if I don't understand, even if we did 300,000, let's just say we did 500,000, and we're basing on that. What would make you double it? Like what? I don't. That's the part that I have trouble with. Is that just saying that we're going to spend $1 million? It has to come from somewhere. It has to come from some type of base of somewhere saying, if your base was 300,000, 400,000, and then you said you're going to spend $1 million. Like I can't wrap my head around it. It doesn't. This is not something you can go also. This is $1 million,
right?
And we're cutting $50,000 jobs, $70,000 jobs, and right here we're over budget $1 million. And this, and we're supposed to be revising it too, right? At every step of the way.
So in our second interim, we had $125,000 in the actual budget. So yes, and when we initially planned the LCAP, we over budgeted. We were over planning for this one action, but then when we actually did the budget, we only put $125,000 in our budget. So when you do the MYP and you see that, you're not seeing $1 million in there because we're going back and we're constantly looking at and revising and getting it as accurate as possible.
So first interim and second interim, the budget was adjusted downward to actually reflect our actual expenses that we were planning on spending for the year. But initially, when it was planned, whatever, 2-3 years ago, yeah, this is what the expenditure plan was.
Yeah, and I can answer that, because if you bring up the LCAP and look at section 2.4, and you look at where we were in time and place, we had planned on a lot of professional development for areas where we had now excelled at, where we exceeded. And that's why I touched on this in terms of like how far we got in terms of like required interventions that we had planned on potentially needing to do 2 years ago for the state under differentiated assistance. The goal lists an amount of working with consultants, partnerships, in addition to all of the sports and activities to address areas that we were deficient in. We're no longer deficient in a lot of the areas where we listed this a couple of years ago. So we're not going to spend that money to address areas of deficiency where we are no longer deficient, which is why the LCAP is structured that way. So that way we have that allocation and we are, again, underspent in this area and overspent in others. Then in the annual update each year, because these are 3-year plans, we write to those distinctions. That said, I'm not in any way saying that $500,000 is not a big difference on the goal. I completely understand that is a big difference. If you wind back the clock to where we were and the kinds of things that we thought we were going to need to spend money on 2 years ago, that right now we don't need to spend money on, that's where that comes from. That's how that works. But that's why we revisit this plan.
But we can't get the misconception that there's additional $500,000 available to spend, because the deficit is still what it is. And just finished explaining, the first interim, the budget was adjusted from $1 million down to 147,000. Second interim was adjusted down towards 100,000. So your MYP that we're presenting to you does not include $1 million for this action rolled into the third year. So we can't get the misconception that, oh, because this slide says that planned expenditures were $1 million when we initially planned it, we have already adjusted the budget accordingly, and our MYP reflects that. And so the deficit that we have already reflects the adjusted expenditure downward from $1 million to about $100,000.
So I want to explain why this is bothersome for me, right? Because in a private session, when people do this, it's because just in case someone adjusted somewhere else, you got extra money somewhere else in the budget. And this is $1 million. And the reason why it bothers me so much is that it's like we're having other things where say, oh, well, if we overspend over here, or if they take this money away from us, we can always use this. So for me personally, from my experience, this is very troublesome for someone to be this much. I know, son, I know what you know I know what I'm talking about, where people do this all the time. And, I understand school finances is a little different, but this is outlandish. Mm-hmm. To be under budget $1 million on something, you can't do this. This is like, this is very upsetting, because nowhere else would this be able to stand. Like, people lose their jobs for doing stuff like this.
And I can tell you we're not doing that.
Okay, I only know what my experience is, right? I can't talk, and like I said, I'm always learning things, but that's a lot of money.
Well, the question I would ask then, on top of what he's just saying, is you say it's been adjusted down in the budget. Where did it go? Where did we put that $1 million? And what are the choices that we have?
And then I'm gonna add, not to pile on, but I think one of the missing components of this that comes to mind for me is that, like, we are not seeing these things, right? Like, this is really the first time that we're seeing these expenditures broken down this way with a real time, like, here's a snapshot where we are. And then really we should annually be saying, here's how much we spent on each of these things, here's what we budgeted, here's how much we spent, because that's what we see in the rest of the budget. But because all of these things are jumbled together in gigantic categories when we're approving the budget, we don't actually see this level of detail, right? And so I would request, and I don't know if we have consensus, but I would request that at the end of this year, we get this updated with how much we actually spent. Because then when we look at what we're budgeting for next year, we have something to assess it based on.
I completely agree. One of the reasons that we started the first portion of the study session going over the expenditure tables is because what you're asking for is a part of the LCAP.
I didn't see it in ours.
It's there. So we will, but what we're doing, what this calls attention to is that until now, we have gone about the LCAP in a particular way. And that's why I started with the philosophical part. We could address your concern by not including additional resources and just focus on supplemental concentration. And it will be very, very clear. We approved in that 3-year LCAP. The board said we only want supplemental concentration reflected. However, what will then be an issue is you should expect that we are spending more. You would say that, well, why are we now exceeding what we budgeted in the LCAP for this actual service? Because we pulled out all the additional funding sources that we anticipate what it costs to actually run that action. And as long as the board expects that, to know, like, when we look and when we say, wow, this action exceeded what we did, we think we're okay with that. whatever assumption you want us to take, we can move the direction that way. Part of what makes this LCAP function the way that it does is we are guessing and accounting for how much in 3 years we are going to be using across an array, not just supplemental concentration, across an array of funding sources. And that's part of where this is. And right now, there isn't a way around that, but we can write the LCAP to function differently. So that is less likely.
See, I guess the biggest problem that I have is most people, I mean, when it's a budget, it's a budget. When you say we can exceed it and pay this, when you set a budget, you have to say, this is all we can do. And it seems like we're setting a budget and we're overspending, or we set a budget so it's over so that we can underspend. Like, a budget should be followed.
I agree 100%. The broader budget, remember this, the supplemental concentration piece is $20 million over budget, which is why when we say we are overspending, we are deficit spending. We are spending more than we have right to spend, and we are eating into our reserves to accomplish that. That's what we're doing broadly. This is reflective of one element of that. So even though that expenditure didn't happen in this action, we are doing the things that support the LCAP in general, but we're not capturing it that way because we haven't necessarily written a goal for that. But we are spending, and we have a whole list of approvable actions that we could just, as you're saying, right, like kind of fillers, like put those things in. We're allowed to do that. We're not doing that because it isn't as accurate to reflect what we've accomplished in that action. But the way that we are spending money, if we wanted to account for it differently under supplemental concentration, we're allowed to because those expenditures align with the 8 state priorities. But that's not what we're trying to accomplish with this. The last thing I'll say before, because it looks like Asami wants to say something. We are saying that this is a budget. This is another one of the paradoxes that the state has asked us to operate within. They repeatedly said that the LCAP is not a budget document. It is a strategic plan that is reflective of the resources and efforts that you think it requires to accomplish that strategic plan. Explicitly, over and over, they've said, however, do not treat it as a budget document. And that is a paradox that I don't think has been reconciled the way that it needs to be, which is why this document is the way that it is. It's one of the challenges that come with it.
Yeah, I could add further to that. Action 2.4, during adopted budget, what was the budgeted number? Was it $1 million or was it?
No, it was 117,000.
So this, at adopted budget, when we brought the budget forward, it was not this high expenditure of $1 million, it was what, 174?
17.
And 117, at first interim, what was it adjusted to?
125.
And then at second interim?
I think it's written 120.
So we're maybe talking, so really, this LCAP document needs to be updated to reflect the correct amount for the planned expenditures. Our budget is aligned with the actual trend in expenditures. It seems like this document needs to be updated to match that.
Which takes me back to the question, where did the money go? Where do we put it?
But I didn't see anything that was.
But the money was never in the budget. Yeah. At adopted budget, we didn't put $1 million into the adopted budget. We only put 120,000. Because when we prepare this, we're trying to do our best estimate of what type of sites initiatives would be, what people, and I don't know, maybe we thought at the time, maybe the wellness centers were going to be into, the wellness counselors were going to be in 2.4. For whatever reason, we overestimate on this one, but we never put $1 million into the budget.
Right. Can you go back to the technology slide? This is an example. This is a revenue example.
The first one?
Whichever one shows the tech plus the costs. Is this one? Yeah, so this is a good example. I think this is the one. When we wrote this, thinking 2 years ago about how much we would end up expending a planned expenditure for technology, we just heard that as we evaluate our actual plan, our strategic plan, you've heard that we are planning on removing several of these costs. At the time, and I would have to go back to what our original notes were when we wrote 2.4, but what Joey is saying sounds right. That we had originally thought, not knowing what the funding sources would be for mental health services, that would be a place, especially because it's under Goal 2, where you could provide that level of support, and we would probably code those personnel to that goal. But then things move and things change, and so you move them with a funding source. But this is a good example. If we round back the clock when we were spending more on other resources that we have also removed out of this, this will, in another year, look very different. And you would be, if we weren't having this conversation today, you could call upon and say, oh yeah, I remember. I remember when you told us that we were evaluating the effectiveness and the viability of these programs. Now you will be able to say that. This is the first time we're really getting into the LCAP in this detail, which is a really good thing. But hopefully you'll be able to see, like, we budgeted, and then a year later, that didn't materialize. However, when you say, where's the rest of the money though? We have a whole bunch of other things that we are spending on technology. We are spending servers. We are spending people. We have wiring, all kinds of other things that far exceed what we have allocated as a potential planned expenditure in LCAP. That if we wanted to say that that was a part of our strategic plan, we could account for it here, but we don't. And the reason that we don't, even though it's permissible to say that that is something that you can speak to in LCAP, it's because it's not directly tied to what we are hoping to achieve as a part of our strategic plan, even though we are spending the money on those things. We could write this differently to capture how much money we're actually spending on our tech infrastructure. But we didn't do that here because we were trying to use this as a communication tool that, in this case, digital instructional tools that support access and increase academic achievements. This was what we thought a couple of years ago. We thought it would take to accomplish that. So that's how all these things work together. And it's just the way that we're approaching it, and we can approach it differently.
Well, that's what I was saying last week when I was talking about you can move money around anywhere to make anything fit into what you want to fit it in. So maybe as a board, maybe we need to find out what our bottom dollar is. Maybe we need to start off with saying, what do we have to do? What money we have to spend? You have to do this legally, and then build from there. Because going this way, you can't really pin down anything. Because if you underspend on something else, you can be like, oh, well, it's because we can switch this over here. That would take us years to try to figure out because we don't work with it every day.
And
so
that's why I offered that, because the way that and again, I put this on myself when it came to the district. It was a philosophy approach of just not doing supplemental concentration. It is much easier to take that approach. It's more simple. But that assumption still, you will still be in a place where you will say, oh, we're only spending that amount. And as long as the board knows, we're far exceeding the amount that we get in supplemental concentration funds. But what you're saying to the community as a board, we are being very clear about how we are spending these supplemental concentration funds, and we're okay with that. We know we're spending more, but we want to have a better handle on the outcome.
So, I mean, for my 20%, that isn't what I hear Calvin saying.
Yeah, it's not.
What I think he's saying is, if we're spending on, a goal 2.4, whatever, what we're allocating for supplemental concentration is that we're required to spend is this dollar amount. What we're choosing to spend is this other amount. I want to know both of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and because one is what is required to meet the LCAP mandated goal. The other is what do we as a district believe is in the interest of all the students we serve, right? And so understanding that those two things are not always going to be the same. Sometimes we're going to spend a lot more that we choose to put on, and sometimes we're just going to spend what's required, but that should be a choice. And right now, it's hard to always tease out what that choice is.
Well, and it seems as if, executive cabinet is meeting and having those discussions.
Yes, yeah,
but it's not something that's going on here. It's not something we're privy to. So, and I just want to go back to 2.4. I just want to also point out it's another $50,000 in site initiatives. That brings us up to $600,000 so far by my calculations. We're only at 2.4 for site initiatives. Again, it's like, for me, site initiatives are like Shark Tank. Again, that's another thing. You guys might make that a priority to meet those oranges and reds, but that is not a conversation that we're privy to. So I continue to have a problem with the amount of money that the LCAP has for site initiatives.
Prior to the break, I appreciate Karen did this. So on the elementary side, on the LCAP initiatives and proposals, there were 29. 14 of those 29 were people positions, 12 of them were extra hours for existing positions, and only 3 were non-people. So I just wanted to circle, I know that doesn't answer your question, address it, but I wanted to circle back to that. So again, it was 29 elementary LCAP proposals, 14 were people, 12 were extra hours for existing positions, and 3 were non-people. And I'll just offer one thing to the conversation. I was digressing a little bit to your earlier point. Where did the $1 million come from? We write this in the spring. So in the spring, we're operating based on last year's dashboard, reds and oranges. And I remember a conversation, this brought it all back, where we were talking about, we had a high suspension rate, reds on our dashboard, reds for specific groups, and we talked about the concept of hiring in-house suspension so we wouldn't have to send kids home. We needed to get them off campus, but they could continue their work on our campus, on our campuses at select locations away from the general population of students for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever it was for that suspension term. And by the time we planned that in the spring, and then in the fall, we talked about it, we were looking, I don't know if we got to the point of posting, but by the time we were ready to enact, our suspension rates were significantly down, and the new dashboard came out, and we had made significant improvements in the year prior, so we didn't need to address that. I remember us saying, we don't need to go there anymore. So that's easily right now $250,000. I don't know if it comes from this particular action, it may have, but I remember that conversation that we had about in-house suspension leads at 2 of our middle schools.
So even if you add that, so we're $700,000 over. Like it's just to me, it's like when I read something like this, it's like we're guessing at numbers. There's no any budget, no matter how you're going to use it, should be a foundation based on something. Like this is $1 million based on nothing. That's my problem. Is that if you had said, well, last year we spent $700,000 here, so we figured that we're going to spend this much more. That's easier for me to digest. But if the number was $300,000, which is what was said, it was around $300,000. Where did the $1 million projection come from? And you're saying even if that's like, let's say that's what it was, that's $200,000 more. That still puts us over $500,000.
Yeah,
just as an example.
Yeah, if I can come back to, we're also talking about what's budgeted versus what was almost 2 years ago based on a level of need where we were responsible for differentiating assistance and a whole lot of technical assistance that we would have potentially needed to pay for. We would have needed to bring in specialists, people from consultants to potentially help us on these issues, like a lot of districts do. They spend money needing to improve because otherwise, at some point, had we not made the progress that we made, and we spent all that time talking about that last time. And that's where I went to the state, and they asked me to talk about how did you do so much so fast. That's why I went to the state to say it was an attaboy. It was an attaboy for our district. But if you wind back the clock, projecting how much we thought we were going to need in order to address these areas of deficit, when our dashboard was lit all over the place, that's where that came from. Because we thought we were going to need to spend that money, but we didn't a couple of years later. The other piece of that is when we talk about suspension rates, when you look at the metrics in 2.4 are directly aligned to the number of suspensions. And so it is correct that was what we were thinking, and those metrics changed. So again, because this is part of like the foundation for how we will be approaching the next year LCAP, I recognize what we were saying is it's not about the supplemental and concentration fund, it's about like how we spend and why we spend. I just want to be able to call back to this conversation. Even then, when we potentially constrain ourselves to what the funding sources are, and we share with you what the analysis is and the rationalization is, either way, over a 3-year period, we will still come to you and say, in this case, we overspent, and in this case, we underspent, because the other part that is embedded into some of these, not all of them, but the goals that are very personnel heavy, we also are accounting for how much we think that same action is going to cost 3 years from now. And every year doing the same thing gets more expensive because of second column raises. And so that's the other thing that we're, in addition to the other complexity, there's another piece which is we not only are thinking how much did it cost last year when our that need was that high, basically 3 years from now, how much do we think we will be spending on this action then? When you account for all the increases and what it costs to do something that you used to do 3 years ago, that is now, maybe $60,000 or $70,000 more expensive. So that's another thing to go.
I'm done after this, but because I know we got a lot of stuff to do. But I would expect when you come to something like this, and as a group, you see a slide like this, it should have been a discussion and saying, I remember why we budgeted $1 million because of this, and this didn't happen. When we ask that question, that's not what happened, because this is so off. Everybody should know why it's off and be like, I know exactly why it's off, because we thought A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D didn't happen. That's the reason why it's that difference, and that's not what happened. So I know we got a lot of stuff going, so that's all I have to say about that, but we really don't have to start with the baseline.
I just was gonna offer a suggestion. Well, two things. One is gonna comment, the estimated actuals for last year was 127,000 for that point. But also for the site funds, it seems like, could we do something similar to like, VEP grants, right? They announce this school's getting this much for this initiative. It's like a one line, Lemon Grove's getting, $20,000 for increased security that's gonna, whatever, right? Like, it seems like if you guys are getting that information, it wouldn't be hard to just have a line of those things so that we know, but also so that families know, right? So that families understand my school is getting this extra little bit of money to do this thing, and then they're watching the impact of it, right? So that you're creating community buy-in to these investments, because at the end of the day, that's what these all are. Nobody here thinks that somehow this money is just, flying away. Like, it's being invested in our sites, right? But we don't know how it's being invested because it's not written down someplace that we see. So that's it.
So when I was getting my admin credential, we had a class on the LCAP. This is the same conversations we're having now. We're like, what's going on here? We're having the same conversations. And I was just sitting here with Dr. Crouch, and it's the LCAP, it's the LCAP. And what this document turned into is, I don't fundamentally agree with it. But from my understanding, what we're discussing was, this is kind of a goal, right? Or this is probably how much it's going to cost. So there's no money being drawn out of this. There's no budget that we're going to set aside $1 million for this. It's more of like, this is probably how much it's going to cost. This is the goal, not so much the budget. So that was hard for us as students to kind of wrap our heads around, was like a budget versus the goal, and going on from there and saying that, well, we didn't spend quite as much, but we're not taking and putting that in a special little column and keeping it there and then using that for something else. It just kind of accumulates, right? So the conversation that I just wanted to point out, the conversation that we're having here is just, it was the same conversation as when I was a student. It's just the LCAP.
That's why we're in the problem we're in. We can't just say that's just the way it is.
No, I agree. Yeah. But this is a state decision, right? This is a state document coming to us that we have to, this is a way, a process that was forced upon us. How we go about it now that Dr. Castro has a little bit more information, is what we want to see and how this information is presented to us. But the fact of the matter is, this is something from the state, unless we're part of the assembly or the Senate.
And I could round out this part of the conversation. Part of why more districts don't consider their LCAP to be a strategic plan is because of this.
Right.
That is part of the reason why, so in addition to my original testimony to the state board, that they've asked me to be on a conference call to talk about these connections between differentiated assistance and the LCAP and strategic plans, because this is exactly what happens. You set a goal, you say you have to address everything on a 1 year basis. You have to, there's so many competing priorities that are given to districts, and then districts end up chasing tails and moving budgets around on an annual basis when what they really need to be doing and should be doing, and this is what we have done, and I'm very proud of it, is to stay focused on a few things say, this is our goal. Maybe this year, we may spend a little bit more. This year, like technology, we're gonna spend less. But either way, we are gonna stay focused on these strategic plans. It is a budget reflection, but it's not a budget document. And then that goes over to what Joey said. But then the board is still, we have to do a better job, obviously, as a staff, showing how much of this is captured in the LCAP versus how much of this is captured in the budget. Clearly, that's a very rough for us. But we have budgeted, like that, the budget that we have, we didn't budget for $1 million anymore. We thought years ago that we might, but now we don't, because we realized that that's not what it's gonna take to make this action really sort of effective.
I think, it's to say it is what it is, we gotta work with it. We can advocate to have it changed, right? I've talked to them many times about re-examining how we do the LCAP. Even IDEA, we go every single year, we're gonna be going soon to the federal government saying, hey, can we reauthorize the IDEA because it's not fulfilling its promises? That's how we can get these changes done. But when we're mandated, there's so many mandates we get from the state it's just not working out. Unintended consequences is just totally not working out for us. We have to advocate as a board for change.
Okay, off we got 2.5, student discipline sports prevention and intervention, 217,000. Supplemental concentration cost. School status is our attendance software that helps us with our SART processes and send out letters that helps us get our attendance levels up. So it's a contract. Student support services solution, that is a kind of a legal and procedural help through the county that we get for all technical things related to expulsions, suspensions, SART, et cetera. The extra hours, I don't recall our conversation on where those came from, but those are extra hours primarily for potentially CSAs or campus supervisors. I'm not sure, Joey.
And S's to support absence, making phone calls home, that kind of thing, maybe meeting with families, all that kind of thing.
And then the last one is a specific example of a PBIS, positive behavior intervention support. So that's extra hours for staff to convene on coming up with school-wide norms, perhaps materials for signage about playground rules, all the things related to sort of making invisible expectations visible in a PBIS system.
Actually, if you could just go back real quick. So you said that poinsettia PBIS is one example. So are there other examples?
Yeah, we have other, a lot of them are the recycling initiatives.
Compassionate systems, waste diamond mound, I'm trying to think, those are the 3 trainings that weren't people, right, that came through. There's compassionate systems at mound.
I did one too, when you did the.
Capturing kids' hearts.
I'm not capturing kids' hearts, I'm like, that has one, also a mindset series. This particular one was a 4-year series in part with VICO. So Chris Ridge came out and did training with the staff to build capacity. So these funds were for sub-days for teachers to attend. And then they did NCPI training, nonviolent crisis prevention intervention for all staff, all certificated, classified, everybody who works at Poinsettia had access to NCPI training and was either paid extra hourly or given a sub-day to attend.
This is just not an exhaustive list.
No, it's not an exhaustive list, but since we're talking about compassionate systems, that's another example of something that we budgeted, and you think about how much do you budget for that over 3 years, and we got rent, and so then that expense fell out of the actual expenditure. So that's another example of us trying hard to make sure that we're saving that general fund dollar by getting grant funding. But at the time when we wrote this, we're thinking, yeah, this is what we need, and it's going to cost us much.
Okay, but that's confusing because there's plenty of places on this where we're showing expenditures that are general fund dollars. So it wouldn't not appear here just because it was covered by a grant.
Yes and no. If we had originally said that we had expected to spend LADG outside of that, if there were other state or local funds, that's probably where we would capture it.
But it says, if it says planned expenditures, right, and if that expenditure is grant money or LCAP money or concentration dollars, right, it's all still gonna show up the same, right?
Yes, I will.
You just added a layer of confusion for me, sorry.
Let me clarify before Joyce says, at the time that it was written, when we thought how much we would spend, we didn't expect there to be a grant funding. So we would expect it to be supplemental concentration funding. But then, when it actually happens, and we actually get grant funds, how does that work?
So then, and this is where being on the business side versus the ed services side. But so, for example, PBIS. I know the term PBIS really well. It comes by my desk all the time, but compassionate systems doesn't. So for the longest times, they were talking about compassionate systems as also. And so, you know, when we're doing the expenditures for those things, there's certain things that are just sort of, you know, missed as I'm sort of compiling this all together. So that's why, you know, yes, to answer your question, it should be captured here. But it is something that I think I just missed when I was, you know, trying to allocate the expenses to the proper resources.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to transportation. This is primarily our athletic transportation. Again, it's in goal 2 because of the longstanding evidence-based practice of high school athletics, supporting school community, positive school climate, et cetera. So you can see the breakdown here of athletics by sport. And I'll work to address some of the differences where I can anticipate your questions, but happy to try to answer any of your other questions that you might have. So a significant amount over for Ventura over Bourne and Foothill. One of the reasons is that Bourne and Foothill they use vans for some of their transportation. Now, not included in here are van maintenance costs and van purchase costs. So if all things included, if you were to sort of include those things which we didn't in here, you might see a much tighter range. You also have length of season. So if teams go to CIF playoffs, travel, that provides, or that explains more expense. You also have length of, you have the number of contests. Some coaches have a philosophy of maximizing the number of contests in a given sport. Each sport sets a maximum number of contests you can have. Some sports go to that maximum, some don't. We don't have a system. We're talking about maybe getting there as a way to analyze these transportation costs. But that's one of the primary reasons. Was there another reason? I think I'm forgetting another reason why we may not. Oh, we talked about CIF. Yeah.
So when we see 0, say for like golf, is that because students are driving them?
No, that's vans.
Sorry, say again, what?
Vans. Sorry, that's for using their vans. Golf is a small team, and they travel in vans. The coaches drive, and so it's not included in the bus cost. This is kind of a bus exclusive category, right, Joe?
And so like softball, which is not that small a team, they're also using vans?
Isn't it not softball season yet?
It is.
Oh.
It is.
Softball just started in, they have started in February, so spring sports just started in February.
It's been long since I played, but.
And obviously the 0 for Foothill, they don't have cheer, they don't have football, they don't have yeah.
And so are coaches given like a budget, like, you know, this is how much?
For transportation? No,
So,
not to my knowledge, Deidre.
Not for the bus transportation. If there are tournaments that are outside of the scope of their traditional season, sometimes they fundraise for those. Comes out of the ASB club portion, but in general, the bus transportation for contests.
Okay, any other questions on this before I transition?
And just real quickly, just to plant seeds, this is transportation costs just for athletics. But if we wanted to, because we pay for other transportation costs that fall under supplemental concentration, we could capture those supplemental concentration funds, not all of them are, but for the total cost of what it takes to transport students across the district. We didn't choose to do that in this LCAP, we have done it in previous LCAPs. So that's another example of it isn't that we aren't spending, we just aren't capturing that as part of this LCAP. But there isn't to say anything we couldn't in the future if we wanted to show that we are using our supplemental concentration funds for the purpose of providing transportation for potentially regionally or low-income students and others as a part of our strategic plan, because we would tie to attendance and other things related to that, and we've done it in the past and we would be able to do it in the future.
And I remember the one other thing that I forgot to mention that creates some of the differences, which is the number of teams within a school. So sometimes you have varsity JV, sometimes you have varsity JV varsity, depending upon coaches or athletic preferences. So that's one of the differences as well. One of the causes of the differences. Okay.
So where would like band transportation be? Would that just not be in the LCAP?
Yeah, good question. It's not in this action. I don't think we have another action, Joey.
It's not in this action. I believe that if it's for a competition, then it's funded by the district, but if they're going for another purpose, I think some of it's through Prop 28. If they're doing any type of performances or something, it's not through like a competition-based type of activity.
Yeah, I think it would be great to capture those other, because I know like, music programs travel, the theater program travels. Right? Like,
travels for competition.
Yeah, so it would be great to look at if what we're talking about is transportations that support community connectedness, right? Then looking at all of the aspects of community connectedness and again, whether or not it's a part of a specific supplemental or concentration, right? If this is a goal that we have as a district is to support those things, then how much are we spending on that goal? And broken down from like which comes from what.
And thank you for suggesting that, because there are some districts that what they've done is rather than have everything, like we took this approach to just put everything in one goal. You can have subsections, so it's like goal 2.5, but then it's 2.5 A and 2.5B. So 2.5A is that goal, but it's only supplemental concentration. 2.5B is that same, where we still say it's a priority, but 2.5B is all other funds used to project that goal. That's another thing that we haven't done, but we could do in the future.
So there's a wrestling team in Ventura High School 3 times as big as.
It's big.
Yeah, it is.
It's big. Yes, significantly bigger.
And a large female wrestling team as well.
Probably about 4 times as big as Buena's, the girls wrestling.
Anything else on athletics and transportation? Okay, action 2.7, still in our school climate, campus safety and security reports, oddly named, admittedly, but nonetheless, this is largely people, as you can see, 46 FTE, 30 of which supplemental concentration, 15 out of LREG. This is our campus support systems, our campus supervisors. This is where they live. The only non-personal cost we have is the Gaggle, and Gaggle is our Speak Up software, where it's the confidential tips that we receive from students for our ability to administratively intervene prior to disciplinary events unfolding.
So this is another area where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like it's $1.3 million off. Planned expenditures, 4.4 million.
So in the past, the extra hourly subs were pretty large, and I think especially when this was originally written, we were just coming out of COVID, and so there was a lot of the LREG and one-time funding that was used for additional campus support assistance. So I just think that over time, as we slowly begin to reduce the amount of FTE, it's just lowered the overall cost compared to what the planned expenditures were.
Okay, this is the breakdown of those specific personnel by site. And you can see here, it's supplemental concentration LREBG funded positions. And just to be really clear, this does not include the site funded positions with the $1 million one-time monies, Joey?
No.
Okay. So again, this is without sort of site-initiated buy-ups that do happen frequently with site monies.
I know this is basing work, but it's a little odd to me that under the action 2.7, this is not where we put our SROs. Right, because it seems like our SROs are very clearly a campus security thing, and they're listed.
Yeah, 2.2.
Yeah, they're here.
So, I mean, I know that doesn't change the cost or any of those other things, but I just think if we're talking, like, from an outside perspective, if we're talking about campus safety, like, putting in our SROs, that sort of just seems intuitive.
Yeah, appreciate, I mean, all the feedback that you're giving us, we're gonna debrief on, and these are the things as we prepare next year for writing that, whatever that new year LCAP will look like, this is part of that, so thank you for the feedback.
All right, now we're on to action 3, and this is our parent engagement goal. So 3.1, community communication engagement, and this is our communication FTE, our communication VIO, and the part where we survey our annual LCAP survey of our parents and get the third-party analysis. The analysis of that survey is bias-free, so that we can design ways forward based on the survey. Anything on this one the team wants to highlight? No? Okay. 3.2, we had highlighted some of this in our mid-year report back in February about the numbers of parents that came to these events, et cetera. So this is exclusively our parent education that comes from either LCAP or DLAC or ELAC or any other kind of parent group requesting certain things. So the team can speak to these specifically.
So in secondary, several sites proposed initiatives, site initiatives to support parent project as one of the examples at the high schools. So I just wanted to point out that in 3.2, some of these are site initiated.
So then would these be more site initiatives, or is this, because I don't see site initiatives specifically called out, or like is Disciplina Positiva a site initiative?
That was done through the multilingual multicultural office at the request of DLAC. We did 3 trainings, PK, Project to Inspire, and Disciplina Positiva throughout the year. So none of that was taken through that office.
I don't think I'm in there.
Yeah, just look, there's no side initiatives from these are all district funded.
So, last year, the projected expenditure was roughly $22,000, but we actually ended up spending $120,000, right? So this year, we're projecting, I'm not on the family education, I'm on the next one, sorry. On the childcare, yeah, sorry, it's 3.3. So last year, so we are budgeting this year 65,000. And so far, we only have $11,000 in actual expenditures. Because last year it was 118.
For childcare?
For childcare that we spent.
I will say that those 3 rounds of parent engagement, only 1 would show up here. We hadn't done PK yet, and we're getting ready to do our 3rd round. I think there's a few other things that haven't shown up because this will only go halfway through.
Up to the year.
Yeah, I mean, up to the beginning of February, right? Is it beginning or end of February?
So of the 65, we've only spent 11.5 through February. So, I mean, that's a huge change from 118 last year.
Yeah, and in years past, especially coming out of COVID, we projected a particular amount and we went grossly underspent there, if you remember. We were like close to less than 10,000 for the last time, so.
Well, last year we were over budget by almost 50 grand.
Right, yeah, good example, yes.
Okay, action 3.4, African American parent community engagement. Just under $11,000 planned expenditures. This includes our AAPC advisor, materials and supplies for those meetings and speakers and services. Any details? No, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory.
I mean, yeah, we had a Kwanzaa celebration, we had monthly meetings, we've had speakers, we had Black History Month celebration, lots of different things that kind of fell along into that group.
Okay, action 3.5, district family liaison supporting Spanish-speaking families. So this is our district funded, LCAP funded liaison. Again, this was pretty self-explanatory. And now we're into action 4.1. So action 4 is our literacy initiative. This could be and was prior to this cycle of LCAP a part of goal 1, but we wanted to bring it out, separate it, to highlight it, and be really focused and specific about early literacy. This is the funds for substitutes for common elementary teacher literacy planning. And again, I think this one is fairly self-explanatory. Again, underspent here.
It's self-explanatory, but I want to explain why this particular one is underspent. Teachers, we committed to training all teachers, K through 3, in the fundamentals of the science of reading and structured literacy. And we've been doing that for 3 years, and it's been going well, and they're just the kind of the tail end of them to get. We also did a lot of comprehension training for 3 through 5 as well, through the California
professional development, extra hours, and Cal Lutheran professional development, tuition fees, conference travel, material supplies. Is this where you want to speak to, Sophie?
Oh, just that this one is also a little bit underspent, and the reason for that is we've trained everyone, right? We've trained everyone, the TOSAs have attended all those trainings, and we've really built a lot of capacity. And so the TOSAs are starting to pick up more and more of the follow-up. We had planned originally for them to come literacy leads extensively this year. Each site has a literacy they meet, and they
account for the amount of the TOSA time that's going to these individual initiatives, right? Because when we see the TOSA expenditure, it's 1.5 million for TOSAs, and there's no link to what is it like, right? But if you're saying, well, we're saving money by not hiring outside professional development to do this work, right? And then we account for our TOSA times there, then for me, there's a link, right? This is a cost. It's, instead of being an outside cost, it's an inside cost, but it's still a cost, right? It's a personnel cost.
It's kind of off the top of my head. I've been missing pieces, but the original budget for California Reading and Literature Project when I began this last summer was around $300,000. We've spent $147,000, and we have a TOSA focused on literacy. So we've paid for her and saved a smidge.
I think you're talking about, would we have some kind of law whereby?
Exactly. I mean, because, one of the things that we frequently have asked you, Dr. Bayless, is what do they do, right? Like, so help us understand what they're doing to justify the expenditure, right? Like, and it's not because we don't think they're doing things that are valuable. They're all incredibly talented educators, and we know that they, care, but it's really helpful to be able to see they're spending, this much amount of time on this initiative that's outlined in the LCAP, and that is seeing this result, right? Like, for me, that closes the loop, and then we understand the expenditure.
I'm just to give ourselves a little bit of space there. I don't know if we can get like
I'm not looking for time.
Absolutely, in terms of like responsibility and percentage of time, what they're spending their time on, we can absolutely.
4.3, reading specialist. Sorry, was there a question on that?
No, I said Calvin doesn't want timesheets, I don't.
Okay, 4.3, reading specialist, and Karen, I know you have a few comments on this here. So we have the supplemental concentration 1.0, the reading specialist grant 1.0. You can see the timeline for that funding. And then the Center for Teaching for Biliteracy. Take it away, Karen.
These are just their two positions, one at Sheridan Way, one at EP Foster, are two sites that need the most support to work with students. One of them is coming through the LCRSET grant. I don't know each letter on that acronym, I'm so sorry, but it's to support literacy. And they're coaching teachers, modeling lessons, they're helping teachers plan, and they're actually working directly with students as well. They're working in conjunction with the intervention teacher, who's typically kind of picking up a tier 2 approach. The reading specialist is picking up a tier 3 because they do have reading credentials and extensive, training in structured literacy. And then the Center for Teaching for Biliteracy is working with our 3 dual language students sites to explore the development of biliteracy. Right? How is structured literacy different in one language or another? How do we sequence things? Which portions go when? All that kind of stuff. Really to ensure that those schools and those students receive high quality literacy instruction, because it doesn't look exactly the same.
So the Center for Teaching for Biliteracy
wrote that in a way to highlight again, be really open and transparent about our need to improve graduation rates, even though technically this was just for the equity multiplier funds for Pacific High School. So you can see the learning director here, which was the plan for that, again, developed and approved with community engagement, the paraeducator, and the continuation class instructor. So that is the bulk of the monies. I'm just checking. Next slide. Yes. That's the bulk of the equity multiplier monies, which is scheduled to continue, Joey. No end to equity multiplier in sight?
There's not this time.
Not this time, okay. So we expect to have it for 2026-27 school year. And 5.2, additional counseling staff. That was the other portion of the community engagement process, keeping, sort of buying up their counseling with a 0.8 additional buy. So I think that gets us pretty close. Yeah, last one, apologies. There is that's right, the additional attendance support family outreach and day drug. Can you speak to this one? This was really important for Pacific.
Some of you may recall that years ago, Pacific High School had a in-house daycare facility for teen parents. Interventions increased throughout the years, and teen pregnancy went down, which was a really good thing. And that program was no longer needed. Post-COVID, it sort of spiked again, teen pregnancy, and Pacific found it's in a place where they really could utilize that support, that tiered intervention again. However, upon evaluation of facilities and licensing rules, and I don't know all of the licensing details, but that was no longer a facility that could be utilized in that way without significant construction of some kind, changing the infrastructure of that.
And a much longer process than just a year to get the licensing. So the time horizon just wasn't of benefit. So we abandoned that.
So that came off the table.
Yeah.
So what do we do to support our students who have events?
I'm sorry.
So what are we doing to support our students?
So they do have a family liaison there, a part-time family liaison there that works closely with those students to find resources in the community. The counselors, they work through their MTSS structure, multi-tiered systems of support with their counselors, and they do an incredible job of finding resources for those families. I'm not saying it always happens where they find reasonable childcare. That's not true, but they do find resources.
Okay. That is, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So that is our last slide. So happy to address, I don't know, Dr. Castro, if you have any closing thoughts?
You know, just been taking notes, and appreciate all the feedback. The timing of this is we will have potentially time for, you will already allocated in May. We have a regular meeting and 2 special meetings. We haven't determined what those will be budget related. Portions of this conversation will be reflected in that, because we will start to, we're gonna try and front load you with, so that way when you come to LCAP approval, because remember the LCAP approval comes at the same time as the budget approval. And that's another indicator that the LCAP and the budget are related, but they're 2 separate things. And so we just want to make sure that as we refine our strategic plans, that you gain more and more comfort with the LCAP. And so we'll continue to chip away, making sure that the LCAP is reflective of the board priorities, the way that you want it to be reflective. Yes, to make sense for you, but also so it makes sense for the community. And most importantly for us, so that we know, because we have to do at a minimum that mid-year report. That mid-year report is both, we're supposed to give what our actuals to date by that mid-year report, and then also just in general, like any metrics that we have. As we go through this process, what will also be important for us is that mid-year report, I think, is we are compliant, obviously, but we can do, there's no specific criteria for that mid-year report, right? So going forward, we're just doing what we know we can do, but if there's something that you want us to do, and you want us to start building what that mid-year report can look like, this is this iterative conversation that will come up in this budget-related conversation. And we have some clear ideas about how you want us to structure that. We'll start working on that. But meanwhile, thank you for the conversation. Because we do, as you know, this is very, very important to me. My comments to the state board reflected that. It said, one of the things that I said was part of what I attribute our success to is the board is giving us the ability to stay focused on a few important things. Special education, literacy, and just general, wellness outcomes, right? Like, we know what our task is, what our next round of growth is for you to feel empowered, not to say this is who we are, we're not there yet. We need you to be there, because in the future, we will be expected to continue to do the good things that we are doing with fewer resources. And so we need you to feel like this is your document more than it already is. So again, thank you.
Great. Or any questions, comments?
Yeah, Mike, I guess it'd be more of a comment. Going through all these numbers, whether you were over or under, it seems like where's the accountability of who made the projection? Like, what is this stuff tied out to? Do you just get to come up with a number, and if you don't hit the number, it's because you did a great job and you saved money, and if you go way over, you just made a mistake? Like, you can't run a budget like that, a paper, whatever you want to call it. Like, someone has to have the accountability to say, we're spending this much money over or this much money under, why? And to me, that's the part that we're really missing. Like, we're glossing over millions of dollars. We have something and we say, this is what we projected, but actually it was 500,000 under. This is what we projected, we're $600,000 over. Nowhere else in the world you can do that and be like, oh, we're doing everything great. Like, where's the accountability when it's that much off? Who do I say you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you're not spending what you're supposed to be doing? There's no tie-out. We just went through a whole bunch of slides where projections were way over or way under. And whoever did it, nothing happens. Is it tied to their review? What is it tied to? We just get to guess, and guessing is okay? Because guessing might be where we're in a deficit right now. It's because all these years, we never addressed it. We never said, why are you coming up with this number? Or who's the person that came up with this number? And explain why they did it and why they were so wrong, or why they were so under. Being over and being under is the exact same thing. It's both wrong. If we're talking about a 1% or 2% off, now we have people making correct projections. But when you look at this, it just seems like people are guessing. or they're trying to meet a number because you know you have $200 million. So I'm not really projecting, I'm trying to get to $200 million. And to me, that's what I see. We're trying to get to a number. We're not projecting what it's actually gonna be. We know that we wanna spend $250 million. So I gotta make a budget for $250 million, even if I know this section is way off by $500,000, $400,000. I just know my overall needs to be $250 million. When if we do stuff correctly, maybe our budget should be $200 million. And don't have all these overs and unders. We should be right where we budgeted, because that's what a budget is for. I know you say you don't want to call it a budget, but we've been calling it a budget for 3 years. We say budget. And when it's a budget, you're supposed to be able to project what you're going to spend and not guess. So this kind of just opened my eyes, is that we have a lot of work to do as a board to understand where this money is going and what bang for our buck. And I think for the last 2 years, we've actually been saying that. We've actually been saying, if we spend this much money, tell us what we're getting for it. If we spend this much money, like, for some reason, to me, it feels like it's going on deaf ears. So maybe we need to, someone has to take responsibility when we're way over something. Because this can't be a guessing game. You can't continue to do a guessing game and then balance and budget on small dollar amounts. Like, we're taking away positions for 70,000, 80,000, 30,000, 40,000. And then we're spending millions of dollars that don't even come to us from a whip of a pen, or it might even come from the site where they can spend $100,000 on something we don't even know about. So we gotta get tired. Maybe I just need to get smarter on the LCAP. I mean, that's for sure. I gotta do that. I have to be more involved on where the money is going in the LCAP for my 20%, so that I can understand. Because if I don't understand 100%, I can't help. And it seems like we have a lot of work to do on even just getting our projections right, because this doesn't work anywhere else. It must be only in school budgeting, because anywhere else, somebody will be out of business by budgeting like that.
That's a lot. So the key takeaways are, if we're talking about the budget, and we're not talking just about supplemental and concentration funds, which is about $20 to $22 million for the LCAP, and we're talking about our budget, that's easy. You know, we are overspending, right? We are deficit spending. So that part to me isn't a mystery. We know that, and I don't think, yes, we're all held accountable for that, and we know the causes, right? Declining enrollment is the biggest one. We don't have as many kids.
Well, go back to the point that we're all held accountable. So who are?
Yeah, so, and this is where I think that for me, there's a little bit of a disconnect. We tried to share through the LCAP, not the broader budget, but through the LCAP, just how effective it has been. Like, to be held accountable should also mean we acknowledge the things that we said we are going to do, whether we overspend or underspend. And by that term, it's a very vague term, because we are always overspending. We are always overspending our general fund. Supplemental concentration is general fund. We know we are always overspending that. There's no mystery for us there. The question about accountability is, we are held accountable. We hold our site leaders accountable for accomplishing varying degrees of effectiveness. What will be more and more helpful is if the way we are showing that the LCAP, what it is doing, because we spent some time talking about graduation rates, literacy rates, chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, by almost every single indicator with the exception of math. And that is an area of emphasis that I've shared with all of you, that we're very excited to turn a page and really focus on math outcomes. With that one exception, every other indicator that the state holds us accountable for, we have improved, and we improved dramatically. So I think that when we talk about accountability, there is a framework of accountability that the state holds us all accountable to, and when applying that framework, we are meeting and in many areas exceeding what we are expected to do from an accountability perspective. So I think, yes, we do hold ourselves accountable to that. In terms of the broader budget, that's where absolutely we need the board's help, because we know that we are overspending, we are deficit spending. And so it's right now where we are working is to what degree do we want to continue to deficit spend? And whatever the answer to that is, that's the board's direction to us. To what degree do we want to continue to deficit spend? Regardless of that, the supplemental and concentration funds, the $20 to $22 million that we currently funded, that amount will need to continue to be focused on our highest need students. And that part of it is, once you give us the budget, then what you are doing is saying, okay, here's what we are approving from a budgetary perspective. We need to spend this $22 million for supplemental concentration of our highest need students. How? That is where you trust us to say, and based on our track record, right? It's not just blind trust. If you look at how, from an accountability perspective, we are performing very well against the state accountability. We can perform better, and we want to perform better. And it kind of coming back to part of a conversation that we had during the last meeting that Trustee Frederick said, which is, and I love that this gets under your skin, like that tier one, that first teaching, all the things that we are talking about, we 100% agree with that. We want to be able to move from providing extra supports to moving more of that into, this is just what we do. This is what first good instruction looks like, and how do we do that? That's where we are. That's what we're trying to do. So yeah, we can do that alone. Yeah.
I think actually we're missing the bigger picture right now, because we're only talking about a portion of the district budget.
Right.
I think we need to do this type of deep dive with the entire budget, because there's a lot of categories in the budget, because like you say, we're deficit spending. So we need to know the whole budget,
right? Basically,
almost line by line, and what bang for our buck we're getting for each of those lines in the whole budget.
Yeah.
Because if we're sitting here saying, well, we're going to try to cut our deficit spending in a huge way, it's not going to happen just to be the LCAP.
No, it's not.
It's a bigger picture that we need to be looking at.
That's right. And I don't know what the exact dollar amount, but projected last year of the 20-something million dollars that were expected to be spent, only 300 and something thousand was on non-personnel, right? So when we come to saying we have to fix our broader budget, I completely agree. The answer to that, as you just said, Dr. Vandenberg, is, and the LCAP is a very small portion of the broader issue. But they're deeply interconnected because we mix intentionally supplemental concentration funds with our one-time funds to achieve what the board wants, which is in some ways to maximize the overall effect of keeping more people to do good things. That's where we are.
Yeah. Well, in essence, the LCAP is to basically give us educational accountability, not necessarily financial accountability.
Yes.
Can I just add to that? When you go back and look at our first interim budget to second interim budget, our general fund revenues were 0.42%. Okay, so that's really minimal margin of error. And if you look at our expenses, they were less than 0.2% error from first interim to second interim. So we're making constant adjustments, and so we're not drastically guessing, and we're not drastically adjusting the budget to, like, I guess, have filler expense budget, right? We're pretty tightly budgeting to where our actuals are heading, to the point where we're less than 1% off on our actual budget that we're reporting to you.
This is a good thing.
That's good.
Yeah, great. But what I'm saying is because what you're talking about is such a huge budget. That's what we need to be looking at. We're looking at a small part and we're tearing it apart. Yes, we should. What we need to be doing is for the whole budget.
Yeah.
We might have to schedule a couple of meetings. So first, I just want to say, I feel bad. You guys have outperformed our expectations consistently over the last few years when it comes to student achievement. And that is not just the people in this room, but our whole staff has really done an incredible amount of work to move the needle. And like, where we should be focusing on that really positive story, right? Like we're focused on this, and this is our job to do this, right? But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that like we have done a nice thing to be, but really, clearly the board wasn't doing it, right? Like, but you all have done.
No, you have.
Well,
You're-
only because we stayed out of your way.
No, and I do want to go back because that's part of what my testimony was to the state board, was giving us that clear direction and permission to say that this is what we do. And yes, there's that room for margin of error because there is an error in this, I think what you said, Trustee Peterson, about like only in education. Yeah, only in education are we expected to say to be that you're expected to approve a budget without actually knowing how much revenue you're actually going to get. Only in education. That's fundamentally wrong, and yet that's what you're expected to do year after year. So thank you for giving us the ability to be as effective as we have, because other districts, they're not there. We're here where we are because of the support that you provided.
So first, I don't want to take that away, right? Like, I don't want you to think that our questions or concerns in any way erode like the pride that we feel in the work that you all have done, because it is really amazing the work that's been done for our students. I will add to that clearly we need a deeper understanding of not only how we're spending money, but how the adjustments get made, whether that's midstream or from year to year, so that we're not just looking at a budget and saying, well, we think you guys have a good plan, right? But like, we actually understand the plan. And I think if we can do that, it also will make your lives easier because we'll have buy-in, right? Like, what you're feeling from us, I think, is mostly just that we don't have buy-in to this plan because we don't really own it, right? Like, if we're part of that thinking and can explain to someone who asks, well, why are you spending this much money on student transportation? Well, we would have an answer. Right now, I don't have an answer, right? So I think we can get there. And one of the things that, so I was looking at just the format of the LCAP document. And so where you have the contributing actions annual update table. So if I'm looking like at 24, 25, right, you have your planned expenditures, you have your actuals based on the closeout of the year. We could do that just like we do our budget, where it's, 24, 25 planned, 24, 25 actuals, 25, 26 planned. What's the differential and why?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so, if you were off, why were you off? And if you're projecting to spend more or less, why are you projecting to spend more or less, right?
Yeah.
Now we have a metric to assess it based on. That's not necessarily adding a ton of more work for you because you're already doing that. It's just in two separate tables, right? Like, and this would put it together. So it's a little bit easier for us to see. I recognize it'd be great if the state changed their LCAP document. That's probably not going to happen. So in the interim, we can just model what it would look like for them, and then maybe they'll adopt ours.
I agree with what you're saying. Part of at the interims, we do that, right? We call out those shifts and what the projections were, but we're doing it for the bigger budget. We haven't called attention to, of those shifts that we're calling attention to, which of those reside in action 2.4 of the LCAP and which reside outside of that. We haven't done that. That is absolutely something.
Yeah, when we see the budget categories, it's, certificated, classified, benefits, right? Like, within that group, there's a million things happening,
Yes.
right? And that doesn't tie to the actions and the goals of the LCAP.
Right.
It's just, general working expenditures. So I think it would be helpful for us to have that clearer understanding.
Yeah, I do apologize for my frustration. It's just like Dr. Danvers said, the LCAP represents such a small portion of what we do. I mean, there's so much to educating a kid on mathematics that the LCAP does not represent, right? So for instance, if we have a goal to increase math literacy, and we have IXL, we have all the expenses for this, and we compare that to the outcome, well, there's a lot to getting that kid into the classroom and also who, the educator is and what year that educator is at. Do they have supports within the classroom that's outside of the LCAP? So it's hard to quantify to say the LCAP has this is the outcome, that didn't work, we must change. However, there's so much to education that will affect the student's ability to understand and learn math that is not reflected in the LCAP. So that's where my frustration comes from, and also my frustration comes from is like, you guys did such a great job, but it's a lot of time that you'll have to spend on that. And I think we could have a better way of doing business here, accounting for these monies and looking at the outcome. And the outcome really comes with the cast, right, at the end of the year. So I agree with my colleagues. I think we need to kind of re-examine it. I can't wait till we actually, start the next 3-year cycle. It's frustration I also have frustration that we're planning for 3 years out. As you can see, in education, 3 years is a long time, might as well be 20 years. The variability of budgets, how much we get from the state, we're probably not gonna, looking at the federal government's budget right now, that's a considerable amount of money that's gonna be possibly taken out of our schools that we can't account for. So, or COVID happens again, or more, whatever. There's so much that happens that we can't account for in those 3 years.
Sorry.
PTSD, move on.
Sorry. Me too. That we just can't account for. And so arranging a document that we get to the state to say, hey, look, this is what we're doing, give us money. And then we come back and say, well, that we didn't meet those expectations, or we didn't spend all that money, or we projected that we're gonna actually spend that money, but we didn't because we needed it over here instead of over here. It is very frustrating and very tiresome. So I agree. I think we need to have a bigger discussion about the budget. Thank you. All right, thank you, staff. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Vote as follows: Trustee Peterson.
Yes.
Trustee Gettleman.
Yes.
Trustee Rodriguez. Yes. Trustee Fred. Yes. Trustee Forsythe.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
I'm gonna miss it.